Hey, what's going on, people? This is Nate. We're here at season 3 of the Binge-worthy podcast series. If you missed season 1 and 2, definitely check us out on YouTube at the Artist Exchange, and you can find all of season 1 and season 2, and actually like 2 preview shows of the Binge-worthy podcast series. You can also find us on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram as well at Binge-worthy podcast series. Without further ado, how you doing, Mr. George?
I'm
G.
all right, yo. This is G. Oliver. Welcome back for season 3 of Bingeworthy Podcast. I missed y'all. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Definitely got quite a bit to talk about in our absence. It's a lot going on.
yeah. A lot has happened in this year. I think we were last on in the spring of this year, and now we're back. Um,
Yeah, we took a break to go outside. They opened up outside. That's exactly what happened.
right,
We wrapped
right.
season 2, started planning for season 3, and then they opened up outside.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say unfortunately. I've still been kind of in my own form of quarantine because some people haven't been.
Hmm.
I guess not looking at the news and following the upticks because we on variant number 3 now. So
Hmm.
get it together. Do what you got to do, but wear your mask. Stay healthy. Be wise until they can figure this thing out. But
Absolutely.
no COVID talking here. We're talking all things film, TV, uh, movies, documentaries, and now that we're open, we can start doing plays and things of that nature too. I've seen quite a few plays.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
what I'm excited. I'm really excited about that now. I've been looking at stuff,
mhm.
theaters opening back up and everything.
Yeah,
If this, we ain't gonna talk about it too much, but hopefully, some of the things we've been hearing um, is not going to affect things so much that we can't, get back to what we was doing.
right, right, right. The only thing is, in a lot of the commercial theaters, you most of them are requiring that you have your vaccine. Some of them, depending on what state you're in or what city you're in, they
Hmm.
may take a test. Like if you've taken a test within that week or a couple days before you've seen the show, some of them are taking that, but a lot of the commercial theaters are requiring that you have your vaccination card or proof of vaccination. So yeah, more of a reason to get it together. But this season we're going to do things slightly different. Um, we're going to focus a lot on a lot of the newer films that are coming out. More specifically, a lot of the ones that are women led in terms of acting, directing, producing. Not all of them will be that, and then we'll actually have a couple wild card episodes that may be anything. Um, and we're looking for people to come on and talk with us. So we have a couple people lined up to come. But if you're interested, definitely hit us up on social media on our Facebook or Instagram page and let us know you want to come on. You got to do some homework. You got to watch some films. So that's part of the prerequisite to come on the show.
Absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely.
Other
I
than
can't
that,
wait. I can't wait till we have our next comic book episode, man. It's a lot going
mhm.
on in the MCU.
Yeah. So this season will actually go over into the new year. So we'll have a lot of things to kind of catch up on and things that have come out and maybe dip back into some things that was and will be and possibly will be. Uh, I know there's a lot of what I've noticed is there's a lot of remaking of things going on more so than I think ever
More
before,
than it has been.
more than it has been. There's a lot of
Is
things.
that because of the CW? The CW be wilding, boy.
Well, not just with the TV,
Nah,
but
yo, like the CW, yo, the CW be wilding. They just
mhm,
be slapping the name of an old show on
mhm,
anything, and then
yeah.
like you watching it, it ain't even got nothing to do with what it's like the thinnest thread of the premise from the original.
And I think a lot
Um,
of that is
but
happening.
they don't be all bad though. That's the thing. They're not all
Yeah,
bad. Like
but a lot of
my
these remakes, they're doing some heavy films that they want to remake. Like, I heard that Waiting to Exhale will possibly be a TV show, but then The
Okay.
Bodyguard is going to be remade, and they're
Mm.
putting like Cardi B or Lizzo and in place of Whitney Houston, and I just think that's just foolishness.
You think
But
that's foolishness?
it's foolishness
Let's
because
talk
it's
about that a little
screaming.
bit. Why do you think that's foolishness? I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Um,
One, I think for me, it's a age thing, and I think what happens is a lot of the early 30s and younger, they don't necessarily have a lot of respect for what has already been. If I could see the
mhm.
respect level kind of equate to them making a lot of these remakes, I would
Yeah.
be for it. But we don't have quality in our music industry anymore, not as much, and we don't definitely don't have that level of quality across the board with film, television, and such. So remaking something, it
Hmm.
depends for me who's remaking it. Uh, is it anybody from the one we originally saw? Will there be on it? Will be in this next one? And for me,
Hmm.
one of the perfect examples of a remake to me and how you should do a remake is The Color Purple. And we've seen it in a book form, we've seen it in
Hmm.
film form, and we've seen it in Broadway
Stage. Right.
stage form. And now it's traveling the world and such. That's to me how you should do a remake, and you keep the essence of the story,
Hmm.
but you're able to pivot in the perspective of it. But a lot of these people just want to get rid of what was and just put something new and younger and fresher in our faces. And I don't like that aspect.
Okay. I see it a different way. I never really I don't really look at it as a replacement so much as just understanding that, like if you have a story, and does it need to be retold? Not really. However, I do think that there's a more chance of that story being connecting with
Fix.
people when it's someone they recognize. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I mean, how popular would the Bodyguard have been in Black culture if Whitney Houston hadn't been in it? Right? Like
Hmm.
you put anybody else in that role, and by that I mean if you had taken any, say, A-list actor or whatever actress would have been considered like on the level with a like Kevin Costner at the time,
Right.
and it may have still been a popular film.
Hmm.
Would it have been kind of like the linchpin in our culture as
Right.
as it was for us when we were coming up?
But it
Um,
wasn't just the film though. It was the soundtrack that went along with it. The hyper
right,
who
right, yeah, that
she
soundtrack
was.
was dope.
She
Yeah, that
was at
soundtrack was like a number one.
right. She was going
Yeah,
into the peak of her career at the time.
right.
So it was a lot of things that went, and it's really
Yeah, but
hard.
I mean that's Whitney for us. But that's Whitney for us. And like, and if you didn't grow up in a
Mhm.
house, um, like to be like our age then now,
Mhm.
unless you grew up in a house that was like music played consistently,
Right.
um, you're not gonna have the you're not gonna have the knowledge of a Whitney Houston like me and you did. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, and I mean I think there's a tragic element to that. I admit.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, like I understand it. Stuff be moving forward, and like if you really like, I think that it's a good way to connect, especially to some of those more timeless stories and instances. I'm not saying that everything deserves to be remade, but there's certain things I understand why they would want to remake them with an updated cast that connects with the youth of today or the generate or today's generation, because it's not always going to be youth. You know
But
what I'm
this
saying?
dig
Like
deeper
I
though.
think that I like, I'm not a huge Lizzo fan, but the prospect of a Bodyguard remake with her in that role to me, as a, like from an artistic perspective, I feel like it opens up a lot of doors to say a lot of things, potentially, depending on how it's handled. You know what I mean? Like
Right. And
the
just tell
remake
your
thing is a
story. Tell
the
your
remake
story
thing is
though.
a is a gift and a curse. You know what I mean? Like on
It,
the
it
one end, it's an opportunity to really kind of bring a classic story into the modern day with more with and just really making it a little bit more relevant to what's going on. On the other hand, there's that idea of this just being this kind of like, and sometimes it feels like that, right? Like it's just, oh, let's just
But
cash
just
in.
make another movie where a star has a bodyguard and things happen. Make
Mm-hmm.
create another premise. This thing to me because it just further perpetuates that thing that Hollywood does, what white Hollywood does when it comes to our movies, where they just you know they see a formula and it worked. Let's put a younger, fresher face in it, and it kind of omits what
Well,
it's
I
already
don't
happening.
know
I
if I
think
would say they do that with our movies. Like,
they do that with a lot of our movies.
I mean, the I would argue that The Bodyguard wasn't our movie.
It
You know
wasn't.
what I'm saying? Like, I
And
mean,
that's why. But
It had Whitney
if you're
Houston
gonna
in it.
do if you're gonna update, if you're going to, because many of the movies that we've done that we don't even realize, like The Bodyguard, was an updated movie.
Hmm.
It was definitely an updated movie. But if you're gonna do it, I need you to do it to the point where the original one isn't even a contender. Do it so it's not even in comparison. It's a whole different script, it's a different
Hmm.
perspective, but they're just doing the same movies and just putting a younger face in it. And I just don't like that model. It's too many scripts that's just sitting somewhere for you to keep doing remakes. It's just to me
So that's that.
too
We could
much.
talk about that in a whole episode. There's actually been, I've read some articles recently about that very fact,
Hmm.
about the phenomenon of like Hollywood, the business behind it, the business, and
Right.
this is all business entity where they're more comfortable investing in a remake, right, or a reboot than they are these apparently like thousands of original projects that are thrown their way like on a
Right.
daily basis.
But when we look at
Um,
white Hollywood, they're willing to take those chances. But see the difference now versus then. We have a Tyler Perry studio. We have more
mhm.
people that are willing to invest in films that aren't just conscious films or art films. We have many
Yeah.
more options now. We got all these streaming networks. So stop accepting these same roles that they're just recycling because then they don't have to pay for they may have to pay for a writer to revise, but they don't have to pay
Mhm.
for a whole new writing team or a whole new conceptual idea. They're just recycling the same thing. We see that in our TV shows.
I mean, I'm not even sure if they pay for that in the first place. A lot of times.
Well, I mean, because they took somebody else's script and probably made it their own. So you're probably right. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's definitely gonna be one of the ideas and things that we talk about this season because it's just it's always each season there's always a few remakes or a few sequels. But this year it's a number of things that are being talked about from TV and film.
Yeah.
Theater will always find a way to kind of recycle something, and I think
Mhm.
it's the platform for that. But when it
Well,
comes
theater
to
is the
film and
platform
TV,
for that. You're
right?
right. Like,
But film and TV, you want to see, you don't want to keep spending your money on something that you've already seen before. So
but apparently they do. Apparently the masses do. Because let's keep in mind that the only reason that this has become a thing is because of how successful it has been. So
well, I mean,
there's
because
a
they're trying to
definite
capture a
market
new
there.
generation.
There's
That's
a
what they're doing.
exactly that's what I'm saying. Like you're taking a repackaged product, right? I mean, it's like the fanny pack, right? Like like they talk about in fashion, like everything just recycles. It just comes back around, right? Like I remember being a kid and like fanny packs was the thing. It was not in our community, like it wasn't in our culture, right? And then like
Mhm.
it circled back around, and now like it's so.
Well, that
there
happens.
is something to be said about introducing something to a new generation that they weren't there, right? Like, why
Right.
should they be deprived simply because they weren't there? And I
That's such
understand.
a young perspective because you could just go find that. I think people are
But yo, like, you
lazy
know what? I'm gonna be honest with you, yo.
and
Like, that's
innovation is zero.
problematic. Like, the the way that they view film, the way that we view film has changed so much.
Hmm.
And like, I'm a fan of like Hitchcock, right? And I remember watching Secret Window one night and realizing just how difficult that film was to watch because of the lack of like cutting in the
Hmm.
film, right? Like, older movies tend to do like long shots where there's not a whole lot of editing to be had. It's just people on and I realized that I've become so I had this thought that because I was keenly aware of the reason why it was kind of difficult for me to keep my attention was because of the way the film was shot. And it had me thinking about like how most of the movies today, it's like a constant nonstop cutting of scenes. So for me, having grown up in a transitional period, and I have examples of both, but I was remember thinking about like what that would be like for someone who is younger, so much younger that they would have never ended up watching like a film like Secret Window that I was watching, right?
But
And
what happened to the music industry? I don't want that to happen then to
mhm,
film and television, where it becomes more about the producer and the editing team than it does the artist. Because that means you could put anybody in there. They don't even have to be a
I wouldn't.
A-list caliber actor if you're
I don't know
editing
if I would
the
go that
direction.
far to
But
say
that's
that you could just replace
you.
like
But
talent. But
you
what
understand that.
I am saying that there's distinctively like what captures our attention on a neurological level. Slower paced films are like harder for most people to pay attention to,
So create
right?
your own film. I mean, my whole just create your own idea because that's exactly why we're at the place where we are in our music industry. There's nothing new that's being created right now. Everything is definitely a sample. Now, at one point, it was an option. One point, it was a snippet of a sample or something that was
Mm-hmm.
turned into something else. But now it's just a carbon copy. This works, so I'm gonna be little this, and I'm gonna be, and it's no originality. And that's what this younger generation is suffering from, the lack of imagination, and it's very prevalent in that now we have a whole industry of remakes, and everybody thinks that their remake is different or their story is different, and you can always source that back to whatever came. I just watched is a TV show that I want us to talk about on here also, the Miss Pat show, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing her. Miss Pat is a comedian. She's actually an older comedian, and
Mm-hmm.
she's starting to get a little, rise, and people were comparing her to Thea Vidal from the Thea show, Roseanne,
Mm-hmm.
and of course Monique from the Parkers. And she kept saying, "No, I'm nothing like that. We're all fat, so that's why you're creating." But in my mind, her show is off the chain. First of all, it's on BT Plus, so that
Yeah,
means
you told me about
everything
this.
that
I haven't.
anything, but
Yeah.
watch it. But at the same time, when you see it, if it had not been for a Thea and a Monique and a Roseanne, there would be no
Mm-hmm.
space for her. A woman of her size, a
And
woman
a
of,
and a streaming service,
I mean, just
because
in
this is the one
general.
that doesn't. It's not edited, right? Like it's raw.
I mean, it's edited, but they're allowing her to say things and have
No, I
subject
mean, like
matter.
it's not. What is it?
Right,
It's not censored like those
right,
shows were.
right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but our streaming networks are comparable to what our networks were at one time. So, to me, it's just use your imagination, create a whole new story, put to work some of these screenwriters and playwriters out here that are just, homeless and hungry. Like, create
Mm-hmm.
something new. And as people of color, we have to force those things to happen. as we forced a lot of these things to happen because we have streaming networks now. But don't keep doing the same thing. If you are inspired by something, great. Go make
I
your
mean, I think
own
they're gonna keep
top
doing the same.
movie.
I think that the industry, from an industry perspective,
Hmm.
they all there will always be that space for remakes, reboots, reimaginings because they work.
Yeah. Well, I'll continue
And I mean
to
they and
get
I
the
mean
old stuff.
they by and large work.
Right. So
And yeah.
so today we have three films that are new, not so new uh, films that we have chosen. One being The Harder They Fall, Bruised, and uh, Passing. And I think I sent you a clip earlier, or a link earlier from YouTube where there's a movie called Passing, which is
Hmm.
hilarious to watch the two side by side is definitely hilarious. So which one do you want to start with?
Same premise.
I mean, well, it's the same premise. Like, it's passing is passing. But
Hmm.
it's always interesting to me, and we're gonna talk about that. I guess when we talk about that one, the casting
Let's
choices.
go ahead and talk about it since we already there. Let's talk about Passing. I just finished it. Um,
Hmm.
Again, it's in black and white.
Hmm.
It's filmed. It's set in the 1920s, and it's filmed like a movie that would have been made closer to the 1920s. Right?
Yeah,
I fell asleep on it twice, not because it wasn't good, just
it
because
was really
it's a
slow though.
different aesthetic
Yeah,
that honestly I'm not used to anymore because most of what we watch today
all
is
that
just filmed
editing.
so it's just filmed so differently
Yeah.
that when you step back and you it actually becomes a little bit of a task because you have to refocus yourself
Hmm.
to actually to be able to pay attention to something like this,
So
right? Because it's
when you
not
get a
filmed like
chance,
your traditional film.
when you get a
Hmm?
chance, watch the one that I sent you on YouTube.
Yeah,
And
I will.
it's not that the story is so different, but one of the issues that I had with this film was
Hmm.
they put it in black and white, and it, in my opinion, they put it in black and white because the passing character was not passing. Not it.
So I actually like that as a creative choice,
Mm,
um, because and it's alluded to I think in the first part of the film that she's not as dark as she's not as light as
hmm.
right if you had not filmed that in black and white,
Right.
right, like it's not right like it actually in the film kind of alludes to that itself
The woman who
in the
plays
very
her,
early part of
the
the
woman,
film.
the woman who plays the young lady that is, well, the lady who was passing throughout the whole film,
Hmm.
she is about the same complexion as the other young lady, the one that's on the black side
Exactly.
of this. So
Exactly. But in
that
black
part
and
was like,
white, it does give you a little bit of artistic freedom
hmm.
to
And
kind of
typically,
yeah.
so I don't want to say I know. I'm not gonna say how I know people who have passed because I do
Hmm.
know people who have passed. But there's no one way to depict a person who was able to pass. There's no one
Right.
way that they look. Some of them you may be able to tell right off the back because of some of their features that are typically
Hmm.
of people of color, like the lips or the
Hmm.
cheekbones or just certain characteristics that you would question. But that was one of the issues that I had because in the very beginning, both women were passing, and I was like, Miss, you're not passing. It's very
Hmm.
obvious that you are a light skinned woman in this.
To
But
you,
well, to me, yeah, but that was one of the
because
things that
one of them,
I
because
had
like
an issue with.
let's be clear about the passing thing. One of
Hmm.
them was passing as a lifestyle.
Yeah,
And we're introduced to the main character as she's passing in the moment and but
yeah.
she's passing for a specific purpose for a specific reason, right,
Hmm.
like not as a lifestyle. Like she just happened to be in a place where if you can pass, it's probably in that
Well, it
time
was her choice. She
period.
made a choice in that moment
Yeah.
to test it out.
Hmm.
But there were a
I
lot
don't
of
even think she
things.
was testing it out. Like I got it from her character. I was like, oh, you do this every now and then. Like
Mhm,
you know what I'm saying? Like when you want to get access to the nicer things, you just gonna
mhm.
like you gonna go ahead and yeah, you do this.
Put it on. You put it on. But that
So
it brought
so
up a lot of it brought up a lot of conversations amongst me and a couple friends about
mhm.
colorism and those
So look,
economic gaps.
before we get into that, let me just educate the audience for a second. So if you haven't seen Passing, you should see it. First of
Mhm,
all, like it's an excellently acted film. All right, it stars Tessa Thomas and Ruth Negga as two black women um, of the lighter persuasion who have a happenstance meeting. They're old friends from school, and they haven't seen each other in years, and they have like a chance run in with each other, and one of them is like passing as white in her entire life. Like she is
mhm.
married to a whole white man who don't like Negroes and is living very comfortably as you would in the 1920s as a white person. And the other one, who ironically could potentially pass if she
Mm-mm.
wanted to. And it just, I think the crux of the story were the choices that they made because that became a point of contention, I think, a little bit was that Tessa Thompson's character absolutely is a light skinned woman who's living as a black light skinned woman. Um,
Mhm.
and their interaction turns into it's kind of the plot of the film, and I don't want to go in too much to give it away, but you should definitely check it out.
Well, I mean,
It's currently streaming on Netflix.
it, it, it is, but it definitely brought up a lot of issues that I saw within my own family. A lot of things that I've
As it
seen
should. I think
among,
that's the point of making a film like this,
and not
right?
just on the not just on the avenue of passing, but how you how we internally treat each other based off of economics, based off of colorism, based off
Mm-hmm.
of just our social uh, and economical status. But it definitely brought up a lot of things because I'm a big fan. Not fan. I don't want to say fan, but I love Imitation of Life, which dealt with passing, and
Mm-hmm.
colorism,
We
and
talked
then
about that in last season, so if y'all
right
want to check that out, that episode.
the film Passing that I sent you to you earlier. I don't like that film as much, but the
Mm-hmm.
same type of conversation comes up. It's more similar to well, it favors this in many different ways in terms of the struggle that that person who is passing is going through. And
Mm-hmm.
typically, in our black culture, we've had a big issue with passing and
Mm-hmm.
not understanding how it was beneficial on one side, but it was kind of detrimental on the other side because that person who had to deal with that was always walking a really tight rope because what if
Mm-hmm.
people found out? And the idea, the film that I sent you though, dealt with the person hiding, and then if they have a child, what would that
Mm-hmm.
child come out looking like? That
Gotcha.
then becomes because you can have a child because black people we can have children of all different hues and be from a different hue outside.
Right.
And
Right.
that idea of is my father or my grandfather's complexion going to come out in this child?
Exactly.
So so this film did not go that far. It dealt with it on the surface of the issue. These two women definitely wanted each other's lives, in my opinion.
Now, see, that's where I actually disagree. I'm gonna say because I actually got the instinct. My takeaway from the film was that it was actually this idea of passing
Hmm.
and the living in the fear of like what's gonna happen if I'm found out
Right.
and all that stuff. I actually think that this film did a very sly job of actually turning that whole thing around, because I felt like the film more focused on the impact of someone passing and what that has on the other. I didn't see it as simply they wanted each other's lives
Mm-hmm.
as much as there was very, very, it was very, very clear. Like to me, the woman who was passing wanted to get caught. Like
Yeah,
like actually that was what I
it was
found
like
unique
it felt
about
like
the
it was gonna be a
film was
relief
that
for her.
everything that every move she made, I just kept saying to myself, like, and there was a whole scene where they had a conversation about the risks that she was
Mm-hmm.
taking. And
And she
then,
seemed like she had a plan. Like if I get found out, then
right.
oh well.
And then I'm not saying that they wanted her life, but I think that there was definitely a lot that went into this idea of like, did I make the right choice? You know what I mean? And I thought it brought up an interesting concept of like, for one character, it was like they definitely running into this woman who's passing. I think it put them in a space where they started to wonder, like, did I make the right choice? Like, would my life have been easier? Would I have been a little happier if I had taken advantage of this unique situation that not everyone had, where I could actually move in the world without all of
And
the all
I
yeah,
think
all of the
depending on
shackles of being black, right?
who, I just think who you focus on, which one of these ladies you focus on, you'll get a
Mm-hmm.
different perspective. So when you watch this again and try to watch it through, because you'll pick up that dynamic from both sides, but you'll also um, their relationship to the other people in their lives based off of the choice that they made. Now
Exactly.
they're making this, there's this assumption that you get from the film that the one woman chose not to pass. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that was necessarily as true. I think she may have had a fear, but I'm looking at her like it wasn't gonna happen. And I
But let
know
me ask you this
she was
though.
supposed to
Let me ask
extend
you
out
this.
relief because it was a
Here's
black and white film.
here's the question that bugged me through the whole film. We
Hmm.
saw the inner turmoil that Tessa Thompson's character was going through, right?
Right, right.
Was that
And that's the lady. If
because
you're looking at this, this is the lady to the left.
this is the yeah, Tessa Thompson is to the left, right?
Hmm.
So let me ask you this. Was Tessa Thompson's character, was she envious, or did it just make her uncomfortable as she started to recognize how unhappy her husband was?
Because the assumption was that she made the assumption that her husband was unhappy.
Her
It
husband,
was
I think it
really,
was very clear that her husband was unhappy.
I
Like,
think he was,
and what I'm saying is that I feel like her husband
but
was
was
in a
he,
space.
but she
I
felt
think,
like it was because of her choosing not to pass. She made her husband a scapegoat for her own insecurities and fears and hangups in the world.
but and see, I didn't see it that way.
That's what, because I think you were focused
I
on
thought
the
that
other character.
I thought that the introduction of the passing character brought some like things to the forefront in their relationship that previously they had no reason to even talk about these things, right? But there was a lot of resentment in him just about the experience, right? The understandable resentment of at that time of like just being black and having, he's a great husband, he's a great father, he's all these things, and he still has to come home and like prepare his sons, you know what I'm saying,
Hmm.
for the ills that they're gonna face in the world.
Hmm.
And then you introduce this character who I think from his perspective was like, oh damn, she got it all. She just was able to bypass all this shit. And I
Hmm.
think it brought some things to the forefront from him that then bled over into like his wife.
But I don't think it was him that brought those things out. I think it was her.
You
And
think it was her?
I think it was her because up until that point, they probably didn't have those types of conversations. They
No,
just
I don't think they did.
they lived in their economic success. But when they brought this woman in, and they were friends with other uh, I think
white
people that
people.
were passing and other white people.
Well, they were
But the
definitely
thing,
they were definitely friends with other white people.
hmm
Whether or not they had other friends who were passing, I didn't get
I think
that
the
from the
man in the
film, but I got
lounge,
the fact.
but I think the man in the lounge, I think he represented somebody who chose not to pass but could have passed. It
Mm,
looked like, but you could tell they were trying to make him the passing character, but it was very obvious that he chose not to pass.
right.
Like he lived his life as just a light skinned man. But it was, and I think when you watch it the next time, focus more on Tessa's character, like all the way through, because she creates this string of stress in her life where it ultimately blows up without giving
Hmm.
out too much of the film. But I think it
Right.
definitely, it was from her perspective, because I he probably always had this point of view because he's a darker man living in a world where it was predominantly white men in his
Hmm.
profession. So he's never been able to ignore that. She was able to ignore it because she
So
had
that's
a little
so
bit more
so yeah.
status.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like that's what I so like you still put the focus back on her because I completely understood that
Hmm
the introduction of a character into their lives, like intimately into their life,
hmm hmm
who's passing, um, brought some things to the forefront. But you're absolutely right because as a person who could pass if she had
hmm
made that decision, you're
Right.
right. She's like to her the world isn't as threatening
Because at the top of this,
and
at the
maybe
top,
that was maybe yeah so maybe that was her.
so at the top of this film, she had made a conscious decision to test the waters out. She had made that
Hmm.
conscious decision, and she ran into this woman. So bringing her into this space, so it wasn't this woman who made her want to test this out. It was that she was trying it for
Hmm.
herself. And I think it just opened up a door of what if that she probably already had, but this
Oh,
old
okay, I see
friend
what
of
you're saying.
hers, seeing her was like she made the because she didn't even know who she was in the beginning.
Hmm.
So she must have drastically changed some things about herself to make it possible. Which
Hmm.
is, and that was it was just comical how they padded her up with the white makeup. It was, even with it being a black and white film, it was still comical to me because they couldn't cover those cheekbones or those lips or
Hmm.
the expressions. They couldn't change any of that. But we were supposed to extend our belief and imagination to see a white woman in front of us, which it would be very obvious to
Hmm.
me. But I think her seeing this woman
Do you
opened
think
up
that maybe
things
that
in
was a
her.
what do you think about that choice to do that?
I don't like it. I still
Hmm.
don't like it. I think it's not as drastic, but just as drastic as when we had this Zoe playing Nina Simone. What was that?
Oh, come on, yo!
Zoe?
Don't do that! Don't do that! Don't do
I'm
that!
just, but I'm.
Don't do
It's the
that! Don't
same
compare this to
thing.
that.
But
That's ridiculous.
how many
That's
women could they
OD.
have found that could actually pass without
With
all of
Ruth
this?
Negga's talent, not many.
I don't know because
No, I know. No,
I'm
I
thinking
know.
of
Not many. Like, yo, you're not gonna sit here and just being an actor. You're like, it surprises me to hear you say that. Like, there
but
are people who have transcended this art form,
yeah, I think she did a great
and
job.
like,
I didn't attack her acting. I'm just saying it's
I
essential
think
to
it is an
say
attack on their acting, though, when you
no, it's not.
question
No,
why
because
they
I
have to like physically like look the part.
no, it could no. I have no issue with their acting. My issue was with the choice of putting a person in the role that could
Hmm.
have maybe did just as good, or maybe not, but it would not
So
have
wait,
been a
if there's a
threat.
maybe or maybe not question, it's
I
like,
didn't know it wasn't maybe or maybe not.
why
I
would you ever
said
settle for
clearly,
that just to have an aesthetic?
I because this goes is deeper than just the acting. This really, when people saw a light skinned woman playing Nina Simone, that attacked people at their core. That wasn't just a bad
Yeah,
bad
but
a
Zoe
bad
Zoe
choice.
Saldana is not. First of all, Zoe Saldana is like light skinned. The problem was that she looked absolutely incredibly
When you
nothing
put her
like
next
Nina
to
Simone,
when
and
you
like she
put
looked
her
nothing like Nina Simone. Let's not call her light skinned.
no,
Let's just say that
no,
she looked nothing
no,
like Nina Simone,
not at all.
and that
Because
was people's
I don't
issue with it was that
and that was
she looked
definitely
nothing
the
like
issue
Nina
with it.
Simone.
It had nothing to do with her looking like Nina Simone, but because they
It had
chose a woman
everything
that
to do
was
with her looking like
far
Nina Simone.
lighter
Like they
than
had to.
no, because if they chose a woman that was closer to Nina Simone's tone and had no type of color like gap, that was a huge gap. That
I
was a
always thought it
huge
was
jump.
more that she just did not look like Nina Simone.
No, that was not the issue that people had at all. It was clearly her complexion. And it's not to say her as a black woman, she couldn't play Nina Simone, but at the same time,
Well,
if
that's
you
what
were
y'all. That, no,
going,
that's clearly what y'all said.
no, because
Like
if it
let's hold on,
no,
hold on.
because
Let's be clear.
if it
Let's
wasn't
be
a
clear.
problem,
Hold on,
if it
Nate. Let's
wasn't a
be clear.
problem, why would
Let's be
they
clear.
put
It
that
was a
dark
huge problem.
makeup on
It
her then?
was a huge problem. It was so much of a problem that it sunk the
Because they put
movie.
that
Like
dark makeup on her.
most people didn't even give the movie a chance, right?
Well, I'm
And
not
like,
speaking.
so
I'm not
let's
speaking
not
for
play
them.
like
No,
it wasn't a huge
and you
thing.
know me
It
better
was
than that. I'm
huge.
not even going to add in somebody who
And
didn't
not
watch.
about you. I'm talking
I'm
about
just
what
saying for
actually
me,
happened.
it was a problem because of the makeup choice. That was a problem. If that was the case, if you had to put that dark of a makeup on somebody, why didn't you take another step to say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do this role. Or what she came out and said at the end,
I'm not disagreeing with you about that. I didn't realize.
yeah,
All I'm saying is that I didn't think it was a colorism issue so much as that it was just
I think
a
but that was what it
wrong
was.
casting issue.
You're
Like
never going to find
in
rarely
addition to
do,
her not being as dark as Nina Simone, she
but
also didn't have the physical build of Nina Simone.
but
She didn't have the facial features of Nina
we would have
Simone.
extended
Like
even if they didn't put the makeup on her and she would have just played Nina Simone, I would have accepted that more had they not
did you
put
see the
on
movie?
makeup. I did. I saw the movie 3 times
Oh,
actually.
because I didn't even see the movie. I didn't watch
But
it.
if I'm telling you, watch that movie, and the same issue that I had with that mirrors my image for them and casting not this woman who she did a great job in the role. So I'm not taking that away from her. But when
Mhm.
you have to pack
You just think
makeup
it should
on
have
the way
been
you did,
it should have been played by an actress who could have
who could
physically
have actually
actually in
passed
real life
and
passed.
not like they did in old Hollywood where they just put somebody that was Italian in the role and passed it off as somebody that was passing, but there are actual people who are. I'm thinking about what's the Minnie Riperton's daughter could have done it. I know she's a comedic actor, but I think she could have pulled it off. Um, or I'm sure there are tons of people. Lisa Bonet's daughter could have done it. She's an actress now. Like I'm just saying. I'm not saying just because you are this complexion you should
Wait,
play
Lisa
it.
Bonet's or Lisa Bonet? I don't know who Lisa. I don't know Lisa Bonet's daughter. I know Lisa Bonet. Wait, do I know Lisa Bonet's daughter?
You know, you've seen stuff that she was in, but she looks just like her mother did when she was her age. Like that's exactly how Lisa Bonet looked when she was that young. But to me, it's just I think we need to start
Lisa
thinking
Bonet
about.
could have passed
Yeah, but
in the
Lisa,
80s.
she's a little bit older.
She's a little dark.
Yeah,
She's a little
but
bit
she
dark to
still.
pass, bro.
But see, this whole lineage of complexion thing is
Mm-hmm.
different. And you may see it like for me, I'm somebody that's probably right in the middle, and you're probably a little bit past me. But in our culture, depending on where you are on that line, you see things a little bit differently than other people see them. And I think until we get a good handle on that, it's going to be a problem when we see people outside of.
Will we ever get a good handle on that? I don't think we're ever going to get a good handle
I
on
think
that.
we're better than we were when I was young. Like when I was a child, I think we are much better because I don't hear a lot of complexion jokes the way I used to hear them when I was younger.
Mm.
You know, and I have a mother that was very fair skinned. So I would
Mm-hmm.
hear things. and within our family about her and other light skinned people in now, and you would hear it. You would, but I don't hear it as much now. But when things like this come up, and I think it for us as Black people, we don't have an issue with this type of person as much as we would have had it with Nina Simone's character. Like it's
Mm.
still a one sided thing for us. Like we don't have a problem with the Wayne's brothers putting on whiteface and playing the white chicks, or I think Whoopi Goldberg has done it before, or playing movies where we look like, or even Dave Chappelle, you know. But I
Yeah,
think
there's definitely a double standard there.
it is. It is. But
Mm.
that was when I first saw this. I just assumed they was gonna pick somebody who could actually pass. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she did a great job in a role. She made me forget that she was not passing. Uh, but
Mm-hmm.
outside of that, I think it that's one of the issues that will be attached to this once more people get
I
to see.
always thought, but like like everything with filmmakers, is not on the surface. And I always had this issue. Like when I watched the film, I wondered the same thing. Like, why didn't they just cast someone who, like, in normal regular life would have passed, right? And
Right.
then there was this choice to film to put this modern movie in black and white, and
This would have
I
been a perfect movie for Zoe. This would have been her fucking movie. This, she should have did this movie.
nah, because like I don't even think, like, the funny thing about this whole Zoe, like I don't want to go down this road, but like she doesn't look black or white to me. She actually, to me, presents more of like a Latin descendancy. And so that's why I remember, like, I haven't seen that film where she played Nina Simone, because I was
Mhm.
just like,
You should
so
watch it. It's a pretty good movie, but it's definitely distracting.
got you.
It's
Okay, I
definitely
might check it out.
distracting.
I don't know. I might check it out.
You're
But
not
what
gonna
all I'm
be.
saying is
I'm not saying you will be so
it
mad
like
and
it
pissed
was one of
off.
those things. It was one for me. It was one of those things where it was like I almost associate where, like, and I don't know what her nationality is, but
I think
from
she's.
watching the films that
I think she's Hispanic and black.
exactly, like I felt like there was more of a Hispanic tinge to her than anything. So when I heard she was playing Nina Simone, it wasn't the complexion that bothered me. It was just like, is she even black? Like, that was my whole thing.
Mm-hmm. I get it. I
So
mean, I understand it. But the way you're going to see that, or the way you see that, is what I see in
I thought this was an intentional directorial, like, creative choice to
I,
cast someone, and the reason why is because there's the passing, and then there's this thing where there's this dichotomy, or this, like, as long, like, white people, like, that love hate relationship, you know what I'm saying? Like, white people typically, historically, like, their action, like their words and whatnot, and like the things that come out their mouth and their actions, it's like, I hate y'all. But then there's other sides of that where it's just like they so enamored with us, right? They love us, you know what I'm saying? Like, and they just can't admit it. And I thought that choosing to do the film in black and white and then cast an actress that we know in real life, it would have been, it kind of linked to that whole, like, because when I was watching her husband, I'm like, nigga, how could you not know? Like, you done made a joke about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, all the signs are there, and like, you don't know. And it's like that, what did it, like that willful, I don't want to call it ignorance, but like there's a willful, like, turning off to, you know what I'm saying? Like, nigga, you love your wife. And there is something to be said about the fact that you would turn all that off just because, you know what I'm saying? Like, you would turn off, like, everything just because a person is black, right? And I thought that was went into it because they brought this sense of, like, how could y'all not know this? You know what I'm saying? Like, how could y'all not know that she black, or that she got some black in her? Because even in black and white, it was like, it's like you said earlier in the show, Nate. Like, there
mm-hmm.
are times where I'm looking at the two of them and I'm like, yo, I feel like Tessa Thomas could have pass for white easier, like more realistically
Mm,
than this other character. And so like but
but if you
and
see
maybe
them,
not.
if you see them, then you'll. I think thought went into what they look like and what
Mm-hmm.
who would be. So if they switch characters, it would not have probably made sense. Um, I I'm
No,
always
I'm not saying I'm not going that deep. I'm just saying I
these
wonder sometimes if that wasn't an intentional choice on the part of like the director.
I wanna give her credit because
Oh,
you go
and
look
let me just say
for
this. I don't know how much y'all know about the director, right? But it's the director, y'all should look her up. Her name is
right.
Rebecca Hall. It's a very interesting story on how she
Hmm.
it ended up writing and directing this film
Well,
because
this
it's actually a very personal story to her family.
right. So, but this film, so the film that I sent you, that's what this film was inspired by.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see that film, then you'll understand. But that film mirrors more imitation of life, that
Mm-hmm.
type of story, that drastic story, where
Okay.
somebody is deep in it, and it makes a lot of sense that she was at the helm of this film because it's
Mm-hmm.
such a personal issue to her. Looking at her, she could probably be somebody that would pass.
And she's not. And hold on, like
No, I'm
just
not
to be
saying that she
clear,
is, but
she's
she
not
could be
passing. She
somebody.
herself is not passing.
No, I'm not
Um.
saying that she's passing, but somebody like her or her could actually pass
Mm-hmm.
if that was a
Pass for
choice.
what?
Either way,
No, Nate, you tripping.
I'm not tripping.
You're not bringing her to the cookout, and people are not gonna have questions.
Well, I'm saying that because there are women in my family that look like her, exactly
They're
like
gonna
her.
have some. It's gonna be some questions at the cookout, Nate.
Well, there's no questions because we know where it came from. We know how it happened.
Well, you all know. You bring her to my cookout, we're gonna be like, Nate, who that?
Yeah, but
So I'm talking about passing. I think I'm speaking of passing in the sense that when you walk into a room, like
mhm,
there's not a lot of questions, right? Like I feel like in this movie, the idea was that when
mhm,
when the character who's passing, when she when they met at that hotel, right? That was a
right,
hotel that was clearly for whites only. You know what I'm saying? So when they walk into a room, the the expectation, the doubt, the benefit of the doubt is that, oh, okay, you belong here,
mhm,
right? You bring her to the cookout, Nate. Everybody, it's gonna be, and she's gonna stick out like a sore thumb.
possibly. It depends on what
Possibly.
family you coming from. Because for her, I definitely don't see a 100% European background. So
No, I don't.
but that's
I
because
mean,
that's
I
just
don't
because
either. But
I know it from my perspective, and that's why I
mm-hmm.
said that line that people of color are on, depending on your complexion and your experience, you see things differently, and I just
Right.
see things differently. I
So
know when somebody's in
she
front
had
of me
a
that's
grandfather who was black, African American,
not.
who was able to pass for white,
Right.
and
Mhm.
it's actually it's a pretty interesting story. But that's what
And
motivated her
she found that out as an adult, I
to
believe.
make this film. Yeah.
So I think it brings up conversations, and I think depending on your personal experience is what you'll see. So that's
Hmm.
probably why when I see this film, that's where my eyes went at to first,
So
because I
there's
know when.
one last thing I wanted to talk about with this film, but I feel like we got to talk about it offline, Nate, because um I don't want to ruin the film for anyone. So maybe we can bring it up. Maybe we can talk about it, and we can spend some time talking about it at the next episode. But
Mhm.
that's Passing, starring Tessa Thompson. Um, it's on Netflix streaming right now. Definitely
Mhm.
check it out. Make sure that you are awake and alert when you watch it. It is It is filmed with a lot of like older filmmaking sensibilities, including being in black and white. But it's a pretty good thought provoking film.
Yeah.
If you into that thing, like I know some of y'all out there tired of the whole like just everything that got to do with race. But
But this is more
I
internal
thought it put a
though.
nice spin. I thought it put a nice spin on a lot that we've been discussing as a culture, just in terms of colorism. So check
And
it out when you can.
but to end that, it definitely it takes white people out of the conversation and puts the light on us. So
That is true.
it's not
That is very
about
true.
them, it's about us and our internal issues. So
I give it a solid 7 out of 10. What
so
about
the
you, Nate?
next I'm still I have to I think I have to watch it again.
Hmm.
But
Well, on first viewing, what would you give it?
I didn't like it the first time I saw it. So I didn't like it at
I
all
mean, ask you
because of
all that.
some of
Yo,
the
just give it a rating. Give it a
I
rating out of
couldn't.
10. They
I
say 3 out of 10 then. Say
can't.
two out of 10.
I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I didn't.
So you just not gonna rate it. So
Mm-mm.
you wait. A 0 out of 10 is what you saying?
It probably was a zero because for those
All
choices, I
right.
didn't
So
like it.
now I'd like all of our viewers to go watch Passing. I gave it a 7. Nate's giving it a 0. I'd like to find out where y'all fall.
Okay. So the next film up,
Yo said I hated it.
I didn't like it. I don't. I didn't because I want you to tell the whole truth and not just parts of it.
Yo said
So
hated it.
I'm gonna pick this one next. The harder they fall.
Oh, for real? Okay. Okay. A lot of there's a lot of opinions about this film, but it's an excellent film. I think that needs to be said out the
Yeah.
gate. First and foremost, it is a on just about every level. It is a phenomenal film.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
It went there though.
so
It felt a
this is
little the Django to me, a little bit.
I feel like everybody. I feel like any. I feel like post Django, every black western is going to be compared to Django, which is
Right.
hilarious because Django ain't even no black western for real, for real.
Right.
Um, um, but it had its similarities. I guess actually no, it had its similarity in its usage of violence. I guess, but it's a western.
But I mean, I
Um,
guess this one was more, I
I'm gonna be
guess,
honest. I had
considered
no
more
thoughts of Django when I
historical.
was watching this. Not one.
You said what?
I had no thoughts of Django when I was watching this. Not one.
This with the gore level, like the
The
blood was
gore level.
definitely
The
fake.
gore level.
Just when you see the blood or somebody get shot and the
Hmm.
blood splattered, that it was like. But I get it. I
Oh,
got it. I got it. Um,
actually, I think that's pretty common in westerns, though.
yeah, but I thought this one was gonna.
Nah, I mean, like you don't stray too far from the tracks. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
there's
I thought it was gonna feel
the
a
the,
little
the
bit more
funny thing is, yo,
realistic.
like actually, okay, so like if you want to be technical, um, part of the desensitization of the of America when it comes to like violence is that there's this real unrealistic depiction of what happens to you when a bullet strikes your skin, strikes your
Hmm.
body. Um, I think westerns have always gotten away with what has now become cartoonish
Right.
in the idea of most people because in our modern films, right, bullets leave these little holes where blood start leaking out.
Right.
But what has almost, and not exclusively, but what has almost been pretty traditional in Western films is that this blood splatter indicates like that bullets rip you apart. Um, and they really do. And if anyone out there who has seen the results of like um, a shooting, you know that like there's never a situation where a bullet just leaves a little hole in you, right? Like
Hmm.
even if you're looking at someone who, even if you know someone who's been shot, um, and you see what's left of the scar, would even lead you to believe that bullets like, enter you on some shit like this. When in truth, like, bullets do an incredible amount of damage to the human body. And westerns, I feel like, have always been in that vein, um, in the sense of the blood splatter, because like bullet shots aren't clean. They just aren't in real life. And
Mm,
most of the action movies that we watch and stuff like that, like, you'll see somebody get shot all up in their chest, and unless the camera lingers on that person, you won't even see the blood from it. But in real life, like, you get shot with, and especially back then, those rounds, like, these were balls that would rip through your whole body. Like,
right.
yeah, there's gonna be some blood splatter. Um, I don't think that anything about like what Tarantino did and let me just be clear about the whole Tarantino thing. Django was purely fictional, but I also feel like Django is one of the few works of film that really got it right as far as the brutality and the ridiculousness of racism and slavery.
Hmm.
And I also, I have to juxtapose that with the feelings of the fact that he only got away with, or he was only allowed to do that because he himself was white. Because obviously, I think any black filmmaker that had tried to make a movie like that would have been met with an insurmountable amount of resistance at the time.
Mm.
So I don't want to take away from Django because I do think that it's a phenomenal film. Um, but I would caution people against allowing Django to be the standard of a Western starring black people.
I think
And
because
I'll just say that.
I think because it, even though it was a white film, um, it just it created that standard because it just it was as gory as we wanted it to be. It was as in your face as we would hope that it had been. And this film, because I think it was steeped more in historical relevance, it just had a different. I thought it was going to be done a different way because it was more historical. That was my.
Well, this wasn't steeped in any historical relevance whatsoever, other than the fact that they gave the characters names of people who actually existed in real life at one point in time.
That was the historical element to me. These people were still real people though, and for the
Yeah,
most
but it
part.
was still it was still I like it was still it was still an entirely fictional story.
Yeah, but it was you can still do that and have because the actions were the things that they made up. The storyline was probably some bits and pieces of what they could
No,
account for.
that was exactly what was made up. The storyline. Most of these people didn't even exist in the same time frame.
But historically, these people were still real people, though.
They were real people.
In terms of
They
who they
gave them the
were.
names. They gave the characters in this film the
Mhm.
names of real life individuals.
Right. So
But
that's
that's where the historical accuracy stops.
well. I mean, well, you have when you're doing a film. This isn't a documentary. When you're doing a film, you have that creative license to
No,
be
yo, like
able
I'm
to
saying that these
exaggerate.
characters, most of these characters didn't even exist in a time period where like they don't even coexist in real life. Like Bass Reeves with
Hmm.
like Stagecoach Mary,
Hmm.
those two people never met.
Well, that was my so
So like
historically.
that's what I'm saying. Like
I'm
I
understanding
think that
these
they
people
really
were real
confused
people.
people. I think they really confused people with this
No,
because
I don't think that it was a confusing thing. I'm not saying that this was a historical film in terms of everything was put into the place, but when you have films like this, creative license is necessary and it keeps it entertaining. Uh, whether these people knew each other or cross paths. In many cases, some of them did, but historically, these were accurately depicted people. Now, the storyline,
No, they weren't,
that
yo. No,
they
they weren't.
were,
Rufus Buck didn't even make it to the age of 21, and he was played by Idris Elba, who is 50.
but
Like, and that's not. I
that
listen.
goes into the
I'm not
storyline.
against. Listen, I want you to understand. I'm not against this, but I need people to understand. It's kind of like the James Bond Black 007 thing. I need people to understand that they didn't recast James Bond like that in the narrative. Like there was this whole thing where everybody went up in arms because they was just like, oh my god, like
Hmm.
they changing the gender and they changing the race of James of no nigga, like the harder they fall is a completely fictional story.
We
It could have
know that.
been
I don't
any
think anybody
western
is not
anywhere. All
knowing
they
to that.
did was they
I don't
attached.
have a problem with you putting people in places where it may stretch their age or stretch
Oh, I
their
don't have that problem either. But
connection.
I need you to
But
understand
that
that
goes along. Yeah,
it's
but they
created a lot of confusion.
I don't
It has
think.
created a
I
lot of
think
confusion amongst people.
I think people who are fans of westerns understand what happened. Everybody else's is a story, as it will always be, unless you do your history. But for me, it was more steeped in history than another, let's say, the Django, where it was just it may have been a story that they just
No,
totally
Django was just completely
stretched
fictional.
out, right, where they just stretched it way
Yeah.
out of proportion. But in terms of, because he could have represented anybody, but I'm speaking in
Mm-hmm.
terms of this film having historical figures in it. Now, what you do with those historical figures is, because if in that case, Wild Wild West was historical, that person was based off a real person that just got stretched out of proportion, and then you put that creative license on it, and it just turned into a different story. I was expecting more because the people were historically real. That's
So you
where
said
my expectation.
you was expecting more.
No,
Did you get what you were
I was
expecting?
expecting more realism than what I got. And the fake blood, and it took me out of the historical element of it, and it just
Why
made
did so
it
you
just a
felt
story.
what about the fake? What did you feel like was fake?
It was fake. It was very thick.
I mean, it's a film. They all
Yeah,
blood and the films are fake. But what was it
I just
specifically?
assumed that it was going to be done differently. I thought it would be more realistic in terms of what it looked like, how it. But again, westerns aren't typically realism. It's normally a little bit exaggeration, a little bit of, Hollywood sprinkled on it. So I get that. I just thought it was going to be different based off of the people that were being depicted in the movie. I thought it would be a little different. Like you said, I thought it was going to be people that actually depicted the real life person. So when I
Yeah,
saw the cast, I realized they took some creative license
yeah.
just for entertainment value.
And I don't even know if it was for entertainment value. I think it was the opposite. I think it was for educational value because I think that what they were trying to do was get people to look into and like to raise awareness about these people, right?
Mhm.
That's where I got it from it. I got that. That's what I got from it. It was like because they were like this was a solid, very good Western film, and like for anyone who is a fan of westerns, my only issue as a kid growing up with westerns was that it was all white.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that was my issue with westerns. They always told some of the best stories. They always had some of the best character development as well.
Right. Right.
Just they was always all white. It was just like yo, like why the fuck I gotta watch this? Like I don't think I saw a black man. Yo, I don't think I saw a significant black character in a western until Unforgiven.
I mean, typically you didn't see
So
any black people. Like, you didn't even see the
exactly,
butlers, or you didn't see the maids. You didn't see every character was
exactly,
depicted by someone white.
exactly.
So
So
I knew that to be false, though.
exactly, like I knew that to be false.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what we put in our film it's important. So like for me, I was in heaven watching this because I love Django, but I love Quentin Tarantino films. So I typically and his movies, honestly, if you feel like Django was over the top, all of his movies are over the top. Um, but I've definitely felt disconnected from Django, and it took me a while to really figure out why I felt so disconnected from it, and it really was just because it was like this over the top fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that it disconnected me from what is the traditional Western
What
film,
made it?
right?
What crossed it over to fantasy world for you? Like what part of it?
Oh,
And it's
so
fantasy.
the I was good up until the very end of the film. Like that last gun battle where it's just him versus everybody is like, and it's funny because I'll be honest with you, in westerns, like that don't happen. Westerns
Mhm.
have always been realistic in the sense that, yeah, yo, you're not about to be outgunned in this motherfucker and just like come out on top like you Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon, right? That ain't how that works. They've always been a little bit more realistic in their depictions of violence.
Mhm.
Um, just for instance, there were no automatic rifles, right? So like this idea of like you having this 6 shooter that you had to cock every time and most people missing most of the time is actually pretty on spot and accurate, right? And anyone who's fired a gun will know, like that it does change things. Westerns have always been, I think, more realistic. Um, what Jamie Foxx did
Well,
at
that
the
element
end,
was more
at the
realistic.
end
The
of that
gun
film,
shooting.
the end of that film, like from from Leonardo DiCaprio's character getting shot, from that point up until him blowing the whole Candyland house up, was just pure like escapist James Bond style fantasy. And that was the disconnect for me because up until that point, um, I thought Django like really held itself in hand, and that's why I think he made the Hateful Eight after it because I think he knew that he gave us a really like bullshit ending to Django, and then he did the Hateful Eight, which is much more in line with your traditional Western and like how they play out. And even though there was still that gratuitous like splash of blood, there wasn't this like superhuman ability to like just kill everybody in the room.
Mhm.
And that's where I think Django went wrong. That's where I got disconnected from the film. Was like the final 35 minutes of the movie.
It was definitely a lot, but I think people kind of. It was one of the first times I think on film we kind of
Yeah,
imagined
yeah, it
what it would have
was.
been like if we had that type of power and connecting that to like
It
our
was.
obsession with like a Nat Turner and what
It
if
was
he would have been able
absolute.
to
Yep.
overcome and get that done in that way, which he did
Yeah.
for a minute because he definitely killed a lot of slave owners.
He
But
killed a lot of white men. He
yeah,
killed a lot of white men.
right. So that was our first kind of non-documentary type of film that
Yeah.
fulfilled that fantasy of a Nat Turner, like what
Yep.
we wanted him to
Like,
be.
oh, yo, like he out here. Quentin Tarantino just got out here, got this black man killing all the white folk,
Right, right, right.
and Django was gunning down everybody.
But in this
He wasn't
film,
taking no prisoners,
right.
nothing.
But that was this. I think that was this film revisited in
Mm-hmm.
um, a more organized way, where it was
Yes,
from the perspective of a black storyteller.
and it was our story.
Right,
This
right,
was about inner conflict between black folk, right?
hmm
Like there really isn't. There's no great white protagonist in this film,
right,
right? Like as a matter of fact, it's just the biggest scene where they interact with white people.
Is
You
when
know
they
what I'm saying? Like it like was the bank scene, and it was like this wasn't a major plot point. It was just like we need to do this to do this. It's
yeah,
like a side mission. You know what I'm saying?
right,
Like this
right.
was a film rooted in its blackness from
Yeah,
beginning to end.
and that's what
Um,
I like to see film,
and
even if
that's
it's
what I
not a good
loved about it.
film. Even if it's
And
not a good
the
film, I like to
ending,
see those stories where we're telling our stories, not
yeah.
just
And
regurgitating
that's why,
their stories about
and
it.
that was the thing that like that's why I appreciated that they layered this film with historical characters,
Hmm.
even though they were trying to make it. And they said it in the beginning of the film, like this is a fictional story, but these people existed because I think
Right.
it's important for us to know as a people that we were there
I think we
and
know
we
we
had
were there. That's
real.
the
I
problem
don't.
that
I
we.
no. I don't, yo. I don't think that people know that. I don't think because so much of what we do, so much of our stuff gets co-opted, and
Well,
it gets
well,
stolen.
if you,
It gets
but it's
stolen,
hard for you to
right?
steal. It's hard for you to steal the truth, and the truth of the matter
No, it's not
is,
hard. It's
this
not hard for
was
you to steal the truth.
Western. This
The
was
entire
Western expansion. This was our Western expansion, and
nah,
this
yo, like
company that
I'm gonna be
we
honest,
were.
it wasn't our Western expansion. We were there and we were very, very
But
much a part of it.
yeah, but
But let's be honest,
we
yo,
were the
like in the
reason that
United
it
States of
happened.
America, like the whole story is them stealing us and stealing our stuff
Yeah, but
and
at
stealing the
this
things
time
that
it was definitely we were a part of a lot of that expansion. We were a part of it. We built
all right, I
a
think
lot
you're
of those
missing. I think you're
railroads.
missing what I'm trying to say.
I'm not
I'm not
I'm
talking about any particular
I'm saying
town
to you
or individuals. I'm
it's not
talking about the very concept of blackness being stolen across the board and
and
like
I get
what
that.
we do and how we
I'm
operate.
not
I don't think that
misleading
a
that.
lot of
I am
black kids know. I don't think that a lot of black kids know that in the 1800s, when this was going on, white men did not refer to themselves as cowboys.
well, I mean,
I
if
don't
they
think
don't
they
know,
know that.
those are the same children
I
that
don't think
are
they
being slaughtered.
understand. I don't think that most of
But
our people know and
I'm
under.
not looking at it from their perspective. I'm looking at it from a perspective of
I'm not
as
looking
the
at it. I'm
uncle
talking
who
about us.
only
I'm
watched.
saying I don't think we understand
But
that the term
again,
cowboy that has made millions and billions of dollars that has become immortalized in the American psyche. The original
yeah.
cowboy are black men.
But I think a lot of us, because the reason I know as much as I know about westerns is simply because my uncle used to make me watch them all the time, and I would
Mm-hmm.
hear him. I learned a lot about history watching these types of movies with him because he would say to me, it was supposed to be black people in this. It was the black people should have been that person, or he would tell me about the few black people that he knew about that were a part of that Western expansion. So he understood history from that perspective, but he didn't know shit about civil rights movement, but he knew black history based off of his love of Western movies because he would just depict. So I think the same people who don't know those things that they don't know history in general. But I think a lot of us, when you add the time up, we were around. So where
Mm-hmm.
were we in these movies? But then you have to also understand in movies in general around the time these movies were being met, a lot of false narratives were being put out there and we weren't involved in them. And once we got to be a part of the movies, we were such a small portion of it that it
Mm-hmm.
didn't even make any sense. In this one, you don't see a lot of speak about Native Americans either. So it you learn history from your perspective, and I think we all need to learn history as it actually was. But again, that's so many different layers of people and
It's so many
stories
different perspectives.
that you can't possibly tell. Because I was shocked that there wasn't a bigger portion of this that was like our relationship with Native Americans. So, but that's again, I guess that's for another storyteller to tell. This person wanted to just depict these people and their possible lives in this time. So I get what you're saying, but those are the same people who don't get Black history at all. They don't
Mm-hmm.
realize their great grandmother was born at the same time as, or died, or lived the same time that Harriet Tubman was born. Stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Excellent film, excellently acted. We had a colorism issue in this one.
people just
Were
so
you
they.
aware of that?
Yeah. I was. It just it made me mad. It made me mad for the same reason we don't we don't talk about it, but when we see it, we get mad, and
Mm-hmm.
it just was so. Would they? I guess if the characters were reversed, would they had appreciated the storyline then, or would
If
they
the
have still had?
characters had been reversed, you mean that like if the main character, the main male character was like light skinned?
No, no. The issue they had was with the two women. Uh, um, I cannot. The stagecoach Mary.
Oh no! But I think they had an issue with the fact that she looked nothing like the real life stagecoach Mary.
But again, so in those types of situations, for me, I don't have a problem with them putting a light skinned person in it because they didn't put black makeup on her. You know, they didn't make her look like the real life person. You know,
Okay, that's your perspective. But most people seem to have this perspective that if you don't look like the person, you shouldn't be doing it.
but I don't think that should be, especially in today's
Okay.
world. I don't think that that should be as much of an issue. Now, if they passed up
People say
all
Leslie Jones should have played her.
that, it would have been
That was a
Django at
name
that point.
thrown out there.
That would have been, it would have been Django at that point.
Why do you say
And
that?
only because Leslie Jones is the over top actor in everything that she does. I mean, they could have found other dark skinned people to do it, but are we willing to? Are we willing to exchange every person that got it off? That they got off in all of our movies? Are we willing to change out every single person that wasn't the exact complexion? I don't have an issue with another complexion playing it. Now, if they'd have made her a Hispanic woman playing it, I would have had a problem with that. Or if they
Hmm.
would have made it another white person, I would have had a
So
problem.
you didn't have a problem with Zazie Beats?
I don't, because I
Okay.
think that should just challenge you to go and find the history and the story of Stagecoach Murray and write her story, and you put Leslie Jones in it. I think that's what we then need to do. I don't think we need to fight over complexion at this part as much as overall representation,
Hmm.
because we just got a story with an all black cast, and like you said, that one scene that was possible, that was made possible because of what they had to do within the overall story with white people, but it was a true storytelling film. Like,
Hmm.
go make your movie about Stagecoach Murray and put Leslie Jones in it. You
Right.
know, don't remake the movie and put her in it, but just go make your movie about her. I
Right.
think that should be the challenge then, versus complaining when we let all those other movies get past where, you know, they didn't care about the complexion of the person. White people don't care. This was a black person who made this film. So
Hmm.
how about you just go make a movie about Stagecoach Murray and you put Leslie Jones in it? How about you do that? Like, but those same people will just complain until the next thing come up for them to complain about. It was shocking to me that they even picked out from this movie, like all the other movies that were made. This the one that you complained about, but
You know how we do. We complain about everything.
yeah, it just we did the same thing. What was the film about Madam C.J. Walker? The her
Oh,
rival
on
in the film.
Netflix.
Yeah, we did the same thing about her rival in that film. She was a
Hmm.
darker skinned woman. You know, I think is a reason people do stuff, but then I also I pick my battles. So I would rather you take that energy and say, let me go tell Stagecoach Murray's real story
Mm-hmm.
versus you complaining that a woman that was lighter played her instead.
Okay.
That they didn't put black makeup on. But
Okay.
I guess because she was and she beat what you call it up at the end. I guess that really pissed people off.
Well, I mean, like like one was good, one was evil, and and I think that's good for our films too. Is that there is no
Well, they both were thieves,
yeah,
like
exactly. There's really no um
or criminals. I'll say criminals.
there's no archetype, but at the same time, then it becomes the question is like, well, why couldn't the quote unquote bad guys win? You know what I'm
But
saying?
they were all bad guys. They all were bad guys
I don't think people thought it. I don't think people saw it like that though.
because
Like
the reason they were fighting because they stole
even
the money of the people who stole that
even when
money
you
from
got your
somebody else.
even when you got your anti heroes, like people distinguish that from like pure evil. And then they made choices in the film
Mm.
to make you just want to root against one group.
Well, that's I'll say the underdog, top dog type of syndrome, and I get that. But we're fighting for something where they all were thieves. They stole the money. Like that's why they had to go steal more money. But yeah, I think we just pick our battles in the wrong way sometimes. Like it was a story. Uh, if they were all dark skinned, would we have respected it then? If
Maybe.
who was considered the bad guys, or if they were all light skinned, and the other was would we like the movie?
I look, man. Me personally, no issue. I didn't even hear a whole lot of issues. The biggest issue with this was the whole Stagecoach Murray thing.
Yeah,
Most people seem to be very, very in tune with the film.
yeah, it was a pretty
I
good film.
love the ending because it reminded me that no matter what else was going on, this was a true Western film. And
Yeah,
that ending, as anticlimactic as it was so in spirit with like what a Western really is.
but it kept the pacing. The only if I had to complain about anything in this film, it was
Mm-hmm.
now I love the music. I really did love the music. I just felt like it was too much. Like soon as they start fighting, then this music came. It was the music just was a little off to me.
Yeah, I think that's a black thing. That's definitely
It
a
was
black
just,
thing.
yeah, it was
We gotta
it's supposed to be
we gotta figure
underscoring.
out but you know what, yo, like I'm gonna be honest with you. I've always believed this, and we've had conversations about this in the past before, Nate,
Mhm.
about how like film was gonna be a larger or tougher egg to crack, so to
Right,
speak, because of the initial investment that had to go into
yeah,
filmmaking versus like music, right?
right.
We've had this conversation before. So like I believe that now that we're starting to crack that egg of like quality filmmaking
Hmm.
at like it being done solely through by black people, right?
Oh,
So
and
then
I think
that's
all of
gonna
these films, all the films that we talk about tonight, have really good music attached to it. It just this one, it was just
but in the right place. But in the
yeah,
right place.
yeah,
In the right place. And I
yeah.
respect what you're saying, right? Because one of the things that pulled me the fuck out of Django was when I heard Rick Ross spitting some lyrics
Right,
while they was riding, and I was like, "What the fuck is
right,
this?"
right,
Right? Like I
right.
completely understand where you're coming from, but I think that as we break down those walls and those barriers, like one of the areas that I think when black people get into it, it's going to be lit. Is composing, like, and specifically like cinematic composing, right? Because composing music is one thing, and then
I
there's
think
like people who have
the
made whole
scoring.
careers.
I think it's more
Huh?
so the scoring
Yeah,
because the
what
scoring
that's
is
what
what connects it to the
didn't I
film.
just say the score?
I thought you said composing, but the
Nigga,
scoring,
that's scoring the movie.
but it's two
You have
different.
to
But
have a
the composing
composer.
is
You
just
can't just have
creation of.
somebody in there that's just like, oh, I like this song and I like that song.
But I think that's
It's
what they.
composing.
I think that's what happened in this film. Like we'll play that song right here. I don't think it was real because it's supposed to
Yeah,
underscore
no, no, no. In this film,
the
I
film
feel you. No, I feel you. No, like you absolutely right.
because it was lyrical, and I got when they were using the lyrical music. That's when
What?
it was no dialogue and they were fighting or things were happening, but it was just too like out of nowhere. I just hear Lauryn Hill, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute! This sounds more like a soundtrack
Yep.
that's playing during the film than you
And
know."
it pulls you and like it pulls you out of the film.
Yeah, yeah. That's a
It
that.
pulls you out
Yeah,
of the film. I remember when Django came out, I went to see Django in the theater.
yeah.
And that pulled me like you know what I'm saying like you've had you and
Right.
Nate, you know, like there's moments
Hmm.
where things can happen that will pull the audience out of the
And when Rick Ross
the
started
the
playing,
reality that you're
yeah,
building on stage, right?
right.
Like
Hmm.
God forbid you've ever been a part of like in that moment, but it happens, right?
That's
And
what
like that was the thing.
happened to
Like
me in this one.
I remember that more than I remember anything else
Yeah,
about going to see Django for the first time. Was
yeah.
that in the middle of the movie, Rick Ross started rapping, and I was like, "Yo, what the fuck is this?"
That what I'm saying. That's the same thing. That's what made me think of this one, and that's how I kind of connected it to Django because it was that was my one of my biggest reasons for connecting
Yeah,
it to Django because out of nowhere I heard Lauryn Hill rapping, and I was like, "What the fuck? Where's we going with this?"
but it's
Like,
all right though, cause like it's all right though, cause the next time we do something like this, like black people will be all up in that composing game, like scoring movies where
so we
we
gotta
don't
start
need to
learning those.
utilize our
Yeah.
most famous or like our most revered rappers to score films because we can
Yeah.
score them with sound and music that hits the emotional tone that it needs to per
Yeah.
the scene without relying on like
And we're not gonna play the
our
whole
rap.
song either. We're not gonna play because we paid for the song. We're not gonna play the whole song. We're gonna
Mm-hmm.
create a
Now I will say this
soundtrack
though. I will
to
say
go
this:
along.
the Harder They Fall soundtrack is lit. Like it's
It
lit
is. It
beyond
is. I just don't
recognition.
want to. I
It's
don't
so
want you to
lit.
push
It's so lit.
play.
It's so lit that like I had some people over and I put the movie on and put it on mute and I played the soundtrack while the movie was playing. And like there was some people who hadn't seen the movie and they was like, yo, what the like
But that's what it
the
sounds like they
soundtrack is
did.
lit. It just don't belong in the film.
But that's what it sounded like they did. They just didn't mute the film. They just put the songs on and push play. That was my
Yeah, that's what they
bad
did.
deal for it.
That's what they did. All
But
right,
it's
what's the next? So hold on. So, because now I'm on this rating shit because I want to know what your rating is. So, I give this a 9 out of 10. What would you give it?
you and these numbers. I mean, it was pretty good. I mean, with the
Yo,
music
why you can't
issue,
just give it a number, yo? That's a very objectionable thing.
because I mean, my issue is
You ain't gotta explain your issue. If
I
you like
don't.
in the
I don't.
totality of everything, out of 10, where would you rate it? Like that's a pretty simple thing to ask, Nate. That's not even
It's
that
not.
don't have nothing to do with race or nothing. See, you don't want to put his black perspective on this rating score.
Because that's why I don't like rating. I don't like rating our movies.
Rated according to you. We know it's you, yo.
Because it's always gonna be a low
This will give the
number.
audience something to like compare. Like they have my
Um,
rating scale and they have your rating scale.
well, I'm just gonna preface this by saying we're not rating on the same scale, but I
It's
mean,
out of 10.
I'll say a 6.
10 being a
If I
perfect
need to
picture.
give
I
you,
gave it a 9, you gave it a 6. Audience, when y'all hear this, y'all let us know how y'all felt.
yeah,
That's all I wanted to say, Nate. That's all I'm trying to do.
I have,
I'm just trying to figure out where the people sit
I
between the
have
two.
an issue. I really have an issue with one grading art and rating art. I just being a
But
black
you got
person.
art that you don't like, yo. Like, and that's
No,
okay.
even if I don't like it, you can't you can't grade art. You can't because it's my perspective. So that's
But
one.
we're asking
Especially
you to
when it
rate
comes
it
to
on your
black art.
perspective.
Yeah, but
I'm
for
at
me, when it comes to one, because I'm a teacher. Two, because
Yeah,
I am an artist myself, and
right.
I've had white teachers grade my work in terms of what
Okay.
they like, and the only thing that you can do is grade based off how well they portrayed a certain concept. Like we can
Okay.
break it down, like the music score. We didn't really like it because the music was too loud. It didn't underline the
I mean,
theme.
that's fine, yo. Like that happens.
So that's why it gets so technical for me because
You
I
shouldn't get
want to
that
learn.
technical. You shouldn't take it that serious. Like, it's just like, did you like it or did you not? If you said
But
a
I have
six, if
a
you said six, that means you liked it, yo. Like,
no,
you know
but
what I'm
I
saying?
have a.
Like, you
I
on
may
the
never
other
give
side
it
of
a
five. You
number for
like the
door
film.
shape, but
Mm.
I personally like if knowing me, I don't like grading black work. I really don't
It should be
like
graded
rating
just
it
like
or
any other
grading.
work, though. It should be graded like any other work.
I
And
have
the
a
more and truth the truth is, the more we gain access to create what we want to create, and like our visions, and really put ourselves out
and
there,
that's why right now. That's why, and
we we
most,
we we
but
yeah.
see, my issue with it is, and it actually transitions into this story with Holly Berry too. With with us, I think we're not conceptual. White people have to be conceptual because they're not necessarily connected to their art the way we're connected. We
Yes,
live.
they are. Stop saying that. Like, they
No, they
connected to
don't.
this shit. They
They're
connected to
not.
this shit. They love
No,
Beethoven.
they are
What are
not.
you talking about? They love
I'm a
Beethoven. They love
so
Van Gogh.
no. It
They
loving
love their
something.
people.
No,
They love them.
loving.
They put them up everywhere. They just try to make them
Yeah,
the standard of
but
everything,
loving
and we just got to
something.
do that for ourselves.
Yeah, but loving something and being connected to it is two separate things. And
But they
somebody,
are
and
connected to that bland shit.
I've
Like, no,
gone,
no, no, no,
yeah,
Nate,
but I've
Nate,
gone
Nate,
to,
Nate. The shit that they be putting up be bland as their potato salad.
and that's see,
And
listen to what I'm saying though.
that's what speaks to them.
But
And
listen
we
to me,
gotta stop worrying
and that's
about
what.
them.
No, I'm not worried about them. I'm
We
a
know
black
how potato
artist.
salad is lit.
I don't have that type of connection. It's the reason I don't like grading our work because
You
we're
don't want to
grading.
grade our work because like they over
No, I
there
don't.
grading their.
Because you're no, because you can't grade. My reason for doing it is because what has happened to me as an artist and what I've seen happen. I went to art school. I didn't just, I'm not just an artist because it's something that I love to do. I actually trained to be an artist. So part of my makeup is I had to learn their history, and I learned that conceptually, that's who they are as artists. So they can see an idea and they build off of that. For us, our art typically comes from the inside out, and theirs is coming from the outside looking in. And it's two totally different things. So for me, I don't like to grade our work because I can't say whether your work is good or bad. I can pick apart the concepts of what you did and
But isn't
grade
that what
those
they do?
concepts. And that's the
So
problem that I
basically,
have.
so
That's the
basically,
problem that
hold
I
on.
have.
So
That's why
so
I don't like
basically,
grading.
so wait, what does grading have to do with any of that? They grade from one perspective, you grade from a different perspective.
But I
If you're
don't. And
saying that they
that's
look
just
from the
me.
outside in,
Well, no,
and
when
we
they're
look from the
not
inside
necessarily when
out,
they're grading, but when
just
they're
grade from your
creating.
metric, nigga.
But when they're creating, is not as connected as ours is. Even when we don't realize how connected we are, it's naturally coming from us.
But
Even
I'm
in
just
those,
saying, yo, from a personal perspective, why would
I
you let
don't.
that affect anything? Grade from your perspective.
I
I
don't, but
grade
I
from
don't
mine.
like to grade art. You can't, as a teacher. I'm gonna speak from a teacher. You cannot. I'm an art teacher. You can't grade someone's art.
But
You
as a
can't.
teacher, that's exactly what you're expected
No,
to
you're
do.
not. You're
Grade their
not.
art.
No, you're not. That's not what you're grading. You're grading on how well they picked up a concept that you taught them. What
And how do
naturally
you
came,
gauge that?
but what naturally came out of them is what their art is. I am grading how well they grasp a concept that I taught them. So if I'm teaching them how to uh, how to do a monologue and I teach them a certain perspective, I'm grading them on how well I see that perspective in what they gave to me. That's what I'm grading. I'm not grading them on, for me personally as an art teacher, I don't grade them on how good or bad they are. I grade
So
them
hold
on
on, hold on,
how
hold on, hold on,
well
hold on,
they
hold on, hold on, hold
grasp the
on. So
concept.
you saying that theoretically you
Hmm.
could have two students and one
Yeah.
of them gave a horrible monologue but kept in line with the concept that you taught,
Yes.
and one of them gave a phenomenal monologue
Yes.
and didn't quite capture what you were trying to convey with your concept, and you couldn't grade between those two?
I definitely could grade because the grade will be you ignored the assignment. You did not bring an
Oh,
element
that's
of
fair.
this concept.
So
But
why
on the,
can't you grade? Why can't you grade other shit based on that?
because I've always had an issue, and it's basically been how I've been trained to be an artist, is how I
Hmm.
gathered that perspective. I don't like grading black work. I don't if typically on my
But you don't have a problem grading white work.
I don't grade art in general. I know the difference
So
between
how do
how
you
we get
decide?
to
Yo,
it.
okay, 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 all right, all right.
What I
So
in
hold on,
terms of what I
hold on, hold on,
like.
hold on, hold on. How do you decide what you like and don't like?
Uh
Isn't that a form
on
of grading?
well
I
look
mean, I
at
get it, yo. Like you're not walking through your life like, oh, I
but
give that a D,
it's
and I
more
give
so
that an A, and I give that a B.
right.
But when you
But look at
decide that I like this, or I connect with this, and I like this, or I don't like this, this is trash.
right.
Isn't that just another form of grading art?
But look at even if you look at the two seasons we've had before this season, I never grade that way. I don't. It normally is a concept, and I'm looking at continuity. I'm looking at casting. I'm looking at the
Yo,
elements that make up that.
I think all of us have, everybody has their
Mhm.
grading scale.
But look at how consistent I've been with that. That's not something typically that I'll never really say I hate that film. I've never said that. Normally I'll come at it from like Tyler Perry. I don't like how his wigs be off.
Okay,
I
so you're more
never said
introspective than most viewers. I get that. As an
mhm.
artist, I would expect that of you. But my point is that my overall point is that, like, yo, like when you decide, like, the process of deciding whether or not something is
Good or bad.
good or bad, likable or not likable, is grading.
It's not, but I don't attack it from that perspective though. I'm never gonna I'm never gonna say this was horrible. I
But
don't
some
do
shit
that
is horrible.
to you because I'm looking at because
You
something
never
that
you so you never come across a work of art that you just like, yo, that's trash. It's
no
bad.
because
That's horrible.
typically I can't even go to the movie theater and watch something and be
Hmm.
just simply entertained by it. I'm looking at how well they were able to seamlessly transition between scene to scene if it was a film, or how did they keep the concept or the overall idea that I've heard them speak about, or the description that I see on the TV of them.
But you're
How
just
well did they
describing
stick
your
to that?
parameters for grading.
Yeah,
You're
but I'm
still
not.
grading it though. Even if you
Yeah,
don't
but
want to
in
admit
terms of
that you're
whether,
grading it, you're still grading.
but
You just have
it's the same thing
you
in person.
obviously, as an artist, as most artists do, you have
Mhm.
much more refined and attuned grading measurements than the general
Mm,
public.
I mean,
But you're still grading. You're still grading.
but that's typically how I am about people, places, things. You don't never hear me say I don't like someone. You just won't hear me say that. Now
You'll say,
I'll
I don't like them because.
no, I won't. I won't say that because that's for me.
So what
I
would you
always
say
say
when you don't care for someone? What's the word that you use, or the terminology?
they're invisible to me because if I don't like you, you're invisible to me. I don't see you. So if it's something that I don't like,
Uh
I'm
huh.
I don't talk about it. I don't talk about it. I don't speak on it. But typically, especially when it comes to art, I'm able to see elements and things that I don't like. That's why
But
I can watch something like Golden Girls
uh-huh.
or and find enjoyment out of it because I'm able to see the elements. I'm seeing how fast they were with their jokes and landing. I'm looking at those things.
But
I'm not
ninety
even looking
percent
at
of
the person.
like 90% of people agree with you on that. Like we all love the Golden Girls.
Yeah,
They were great.
but y'all liked it for personalities.
Don't
I
be
was
trying to tell
looking
me what
at
I liked it for, yo.
I'm
Maybe
no
I liked it for that witty ass quick jokes, yo.
right
Like
their personalities.
Betty
That's part
White
of the
wasn't no
personality.
slouch, bro.
Right, but I'm still looking at the set. I'm looking at the jokes. I'm That's just what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at like most people don't like going
So
to
you're
movies with me.
aware that you're not judging. You don't critique art. It
Uh-uh.
feels like to me, you're like this is where I find this exchange interesting and a little bit funny because I hear you, and it
Mm-hmm.
sounds to me like what you're saying is I'm an artist, so when I judge art, it's a different parameter, which to me is like normal. Like that makes sense. Like I don't like there's nothing I don't want to say not special, but I feel like that's what is expected of you,
Mm-hmm.
Nate, the artist. Like you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't judge art in any form in the way
Right.
that like 90% of the population would, because you yourself are an artist. So what 90% of the population doesn't understand is what goes into creation.
Right. And that's
So
normally
you
what I'm
you
looking at.
judge from that what goes into creation, which makes total sense and
Mm-hmm.
it's completely understandable, but
Yeah.
doesn't negate the fact that you should be able to give me a score, nigga.
But
That's
it's
all I'm
not. But
saying.
the score is not going to be based off of your score. So it's going to still.
That's
If I
fine, yo.
say
Like I
six,
think our audience, I
yeah.
think okay, in the sense of like our audience, like
Mm-hmm.
binge-worthy podcast audiences,
Mm-hmm.
I think that anyone, if this is your first time listening, Nate and I have wildly different perspectives, and that's exactly why we decided to do a podcast together. For those of you who've been watching, listening for some time now, you
Mm-hmm.
already know this,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's like a moot. It's like it doesn't even matter. Like they know that Nate and George's like outlook on art is very different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I think our audience knows that. And if you don't know that now, you know.
Right.
Right? So like I just want you to give me a score. Like give me your score. Like I know what I'm judging art on. You know what you're judging or like what you are evaluating art on. So just give me your score, nigga. Like you ain't gotta go into all the particulars. Like they'll get
But
it.
I think
We
it's
got
very
different scores.
important. It's
Like
important for me to say that because I see us doing that to our work all the time. We pick
mm-hmm,
apart our own work, and it's one of the reasons why we don't see our work as often either. Because to think that these people that's sitting up in these uh, offices are not paying
mm-hmm,
attention to the things that we're saying is
mm-hmm.
ridiculous, and it's one of the reasons that I keep my mouth off of stuff that I don't like, and I only talk about the stuff that I do like, and I
Yeah.
only speak about it in a way that is, educating because I'm a teacher aside from being an artist as well, and that's just
Okay.
how I communicate. It's how I choose to depict Black art because I think it's too many people that's already picking us apart inside and outside. And that's just based off of my experiences personally and what I've seen other people do to other Black artists. And it's just my choice. I just so putting our work on a scale is like it feels like the auction block to me. And it just
Mm,
that's how it feels to me. Like, because I think it's room for everything. Whether you like it or not, it's still room for it. Is a
yeah.
place for it. So that's why it's not anything deeper than that for me. But my experience has been horrible going to predominantly white schools learning to be an artist because they
Mm,
look at our work so much harder. than they look at their own because they think they're idea people,
Yeah.
and we don't.
I
We
mean,
don't look
they have whole ideals that they build the foundations of art around
right,
that they think are so profound,
and they not.
and yeah, and they're not.
They not.
But we
Trust.
ain't worried about them.
So the last film,
Bruised.
the last.
Yeah, I'm glad we. This was the perfect conversation to segue into this film
Mm-hmm.
because niggas don't like Halle Berry. At least that's my perception.
I think with Halle Berry, she
That's my
does
perception.
well. They don't like her because she's done a lot of work both on the independent side and on the commercial side. And her commercial work to me is not good, but the level of work that I know that she puts into her performances is much better than typically their favorite actors. But I do agree her independent work is far above her commercial work. And this piece
But
right
isn't that
here,
mostly true? Isn't that mostly true in general, though?
um, for some
That
people,
independent film is far above the
well,
like
I
the
think
regurgitated like
yeah,
Hollywood tends to go for the sure thing,
but
right?
the person who suffers the most when that happens is the actor,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Halle Berry has been one because she's been noted to be this beautiful woman who people was like, oh, she's not a good actor because we kept seeing her in these blockbuster type films, but then
What
we forget
blockbuster type films was Halle Berry in?
more so like when she did
She was on.
Catwoman.
That was it.
She did a couple more like big films though. But I think
No.
a lot of her work that typically people don't see, like Their Eyes Were Watching God, or even when she played in I Losing Isaiah, those films
Mm-hmm.
we got to see a certain aspect of her. But then people
Right.
began to typecast her. When she was in Monsters Ball, that was another big film that she was in. So when she
Mm-hmm.
was in those films,
Was that a
the
big film? That was
stereotype.
an indie. That was an indie film. That wasn't a big film.
Yeah, but that still became a really big movie because it won a lot of
It became a
awards.
big thing. It
Right.
became a big thing because Halle Berry fucked a
But
white
that
guy.
was again. Well, I don't think it. I think that was for commercial
And
audiences. That became a big deal. But I
no,
mean,
it became a big deal in black audiences. Commercials audiences didn't give a fuck. That's why they gave it the Academy Award.
but because it got so much commercial acclaim, I think that's when it became. If it was something that didn't really do numbers, we wouldn't have
It didn't do
cared.
numbers.
Nobody. I mean, I said if it didn't get the
It didn't.
numbers, it did. I mean, that film did
No, it
really
didn't.
well.
It didn't. Most. Hold on. Time out. Most of the films that we see get nominated for Academy Awards and award seasons and stuff like that, they don't do numbers. Monster Ball didn't do no numbers. It
In
wasn't no
terms of
big
people
blockbuster.
who love that
It
film,
wasn't. It
that
wasn't a
film did
big
very
blockbuster
well.
film. The only people who loved it were critics. It's not even a film that most people would love because it's not
But most people
what
saw the
most people
film though. A
would
lot of people
consider
saw that film. Look at the numbers. Like a lot of people saw that film though.
like when you say that, yo, like that's such a like it's been on TNT. It's been in like when it came out, a lot of people saw it.
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
No,
In my opinion, I think because there was a lot of talk around that film when it first came out, and
it
up
was a lot of
until
talk around the film because critics were talking about it. They
yeah,
were
but
talking
I
about it
don't.
being an awards contender, and then black people were like, "What? Like y'all gonna give her?" It was the whole Denzel why he had to be crooked before he took it thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you gonna give her an Academy Award now because she fucked the white guy on camera. It was not.
I don't think that was
It
what
didn't
it
do
was about.
numbers though. It
That
like
part of
what
it
do you
didn't.
and then that's subjective. What do you mean by like numbers? You know what I'm
And
saying?
in
Like,
terms of the interest of that film, when that film came out, it definitely it
but yo, like
won.
Manchester by the Sea had a lot of it generated a lot of interest amongst critics. It didn't do well at the box office.
I So look it up and see how much money it made then that opening weekend, and I think that would be a good indication of how popular it was. But
It had a total box office of $45 million.
in 2001,
A total box office
I think that was pretty good for
for a total
a
box
small movie
office.
like that.
Even in 2001, you're like, no, that's not. I mean, that's not anything that's like mind blowing.
I mean, what would be a better number to you then?
Oh, I mean, I'm not basing it on the numbers. I'm just saying that's not a film that people ran out to see, yo.
Well, maybe it's just the people I knew, but everybody saw that movie. I knew a lot of people went out to go see that film. So that was to me that made it was popular because it was black and white people who was going to see that film. And I think for her, especially for this film where she had most of the creative control, it really showed you what type of actor she really is. And she's not just a pretty face that does pretty films. She can really get gritty, she can really be out there, and she can do stuff that we didn't expect for her to do. And this wasn't something that I thought I would ever see Halle Berry doing it because she was Halle Berry. But I think for her, I think
So,
she needs to
time
stick
out.
to this
So
lane.
that's my issue right there. Like, what about this film? So you didn't think Halle Berry was like a phenomenal actress?
I did think she was a good actress because I
So
saw
why
the
did this
film.
surprise? Why are you acting like this movie surprised
No,
you?
it didn't. It didn't surprise me. I am saying I knew if she got more creative control over the films that she was doing, she would do better in those films, and she would do better overall in the films. You know, I'm a big fan of all of those small queens. Their eyes were watching God. I'm trying to think of the other ones she did that I can't think of the Isaiah losing Isaiah. Those types of films where it was a
Mm-hmm.
smaller cast, it was a smaller type film, considered a smaller film, but it was more independent, where the story was, able to be seen over all of the promotion and marketing. In my opinion, she did better when she played a crackhead. I think she was phenomenal at playing a crackhead because nobody thought she could be a crackhead. But I
Mm-hmm.
think in this film, we saw with her having control over her story or the story
Mm-hmm.
that she's telling, it will be a great thing for her. And I think she needs to start investing in her work more often, probably for the rest of
Maybe,
her
man.
career.
I would think she just need to start investing in better films more often.
Well, in her independent films, they were all really good films. It just
No, they weren't all really good films.
which
This
ones
one was a
weren't
really
good?
good film.
Which
Bruised was
wasn't was
really good.
which one wasn't
I
good?
don't know. Name some of her independent films, my guy.
I mean, many of
Like
I just named you
Monsters
three or
Ball. Like
four of them.
I'll give you Monsters Ball. That was pretty independent.
I mean, well, that wouldn't be at the top of
I
my
just think she's a hit. I
my
think that
list.
she's had hit. I think that she has had a hit or miss type of thing in the roles that the movies
But
and the
what is
roles that
hit
she
or miss?
chooses.
What was
But
her hit or misses?
okay, she did a movie called Dark Cloud. I feel like that Dark Tide. I'm sorry,
Hmm.
that was a miss. Cloud Atlas. That was a miss. Then she did like the I don't know if y'all know, like if you into that type of thing, like she was in the last John Wick movie, and like
Hmm.
she was a very, very minor supporting character, but she
Hmm.
murdered that shit. Like she was
Yeah.
absolutely phenomenal in that, right?
Hmm.
Then she did movies like Perfect Stranger. That was like, you know what I'm saying? Like that was a miss. Then she did Gothica, and that was a hit. You know what I'm saying? She did the X-Men films, and those were hits. She did Swordfish, and that was kind of like,
But most
I
people
don't
don't.
know.
Most people don't like her from X-Men. I mean, some of her. I like more the films where we got to see her in a different light. I
Nah,
think one.
I'm just saying, some actors I feel like have sunk their own careers because of the choices that they've made, right? Like, I think Halle Berry is right on line with like a Cuba Gooding Jr. Like,
Hmm.
talent, pretty comparable, like, came into the game real hot, being put up in a very young age against very, very experienced, like being co-starred with very prominent and very experienced actors and actresses, and then they made some really, really bad decisions. Like that Catwoman movie sunk her career. Like that Catwoman movie was a really bad decision.
Yeah,
And like,
that's why I don't typically I wouldn't prefer her in those bigger movies. I like her in I'm not and I don't want to say
but
bigger
I don't think
movies.
yo like
I
time
don't
out
want
yo like
to,
stop because you try to act like it's this huge difference between independent film and big films. No, yo, like there's
I
good.
didn't I
Hold
didn't
on,
say that. I said
you didn't
for
say that. You
her
didn't say that. I know,
in
Nate.
her
You didn't say that.
independent
I know
film.
you didn't say that. I know you didn't say that. You implied it though.
No,
My
that
point is
wasn't.
that
That's not I
you
said
did
for
imply
her.
it, even if you didn't think
No,
it. You inferred it. And what I'm
no,
saying is
I'm
that
saying
this
what
is
I meant for her. I was
there's
speaking about
no
her and her
yo
independent film.
there's no distinction between this is a big budget film and it's a low budget film. Nigga, it's good films and bad films, and
No,
she's been
but
on
I
the
didn't
better
bring up.
side of bad films.
I didn't bring up.
Done
I didn't
a
bring up
bad
budget. I
job.
didn't bring up any
She's
of
been
that.
on the better
That
side
wasn't
of
what I
bad films.
implied. What I said was, for me, Halle Berry and her independent films, I like her so much better. The movie is much better for me when there's a distinct story. A lot of those type of historical type of films she did as independent, I like those types of films from Halle Berry because we got to see more stories like this. There was a distinctive story
I just
that
like good
came out.
films. I just like good films.
Well,
And
I didn't see,
it just
and
so
that's why I
happens
don't
that in
grade
Halle
good films.
Berry's case, her more independent like films have been the better roles.
And that was my point across the board. It wasn't about money or anything. For
It
me, I
wasn't
just
about
think
money for me. I was just like, yo, like
she
she could have
does
said
better.
no to Catwoman because it was clearly a horrible film. Could have just said no.
I mean, but
But
I
she
mean,
but she was
some
fresh
people
off an
choose.
Academy Award, and it's like you get the demand. Like at the time, I think the standard after an Academy Award was like 20 million per
But
film.
but that was
She
but for
got a
her
20 million. I like
but
you
for
gotta.
her
I
she
can't get mad
said
at her, but
but see for her she said the same thing that Monique said. Once you get it as a black woman, you're not guaranteed those big blockbuster movies.
no,
It's
she
not.
got 20 million for Catwoman.
Yeah, but how many
Yep,
other movies did she get paid that same amount from?
probably not. Probably none, because Catwoman sucks. Like you don't get that shit for life. It's not a Willy Wonka golden ticket. Like, it's not
But
it's not
she's
a Willy
definitely
Wonka golden
deserved
ticket
it.
where you
She's
get
definitely
20 million
deserved it.
every time you decide to do a film.
But she's
No, you get
deserved
20
it.
million at like you get a certain you get the set like what they say in our culture, like nigga, when you win an Academy Award, the price goes up. And everybody understands that. So they're gonna pay you that price. But then if you don't if you don't
But it
keep
wasn't
that
it
shit
wasn't a
going,
bad movie because she was
it
bad.
was
It was a bad
horrible.
movie.
Nigga, no, it was horrible. She was horrible. The movie was
I
horrible.
don't think she
Sharon
was
Stone was
horrible.
horrible. Like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm a comic book fan. I was looking forward to that movie. Niggas was excited that Halle Berry was playing Catwoman because it's the first time that a black woman was
Mhm.
portraying that character, who's a very beloved character since Eartha Kitt. That movie sucked.
Yeah, but the movie sucked. That was bad direction. That was bad. That was just a
Bad
bad
acting.
movie
It was bad
overall.
direction. It was bad judgment because
I
Halle
think
Berry should have known. She should have known that movie was gonna suck.
I think it was bad direction, and you can't see stuff like
She
that
should
as
have
an
known.
actor. You don't really. You're not
Shit.
supposed to see stuff like that.
Shit.
You take the direction
Nigga, if they'd
and
have
you
offered
make
me the
the best out
Benjamin
of it.
Bratt role, I'd have been like, nah, nigga, I can't do this.
And the reason I like her in the independent films because it seems like they give her more creative license as an actor. When you're doing those
How did you
big
what
blockbusters,
how
is more emphasis put on the image of who you are than the content
so
of who you
pick
are.
better shit. Pick better shit, Holly. Pick better
Yeah,
big budget movies.
but
Cause y'all like
we have to
cause y'all like
understand that as actors, you don't as black actors, we don't get that. We've started to get
Berry gonna
that
get that
now that
though.
there are
Halle
other
Berry gonna get that.
platforms for us
Halle
to
Berry
play
gonna get
on.
that.
She
Halle
not,
Berry
but
gonna get
she's
that.
already. But if you look at
She gonna get that again. Nah,
No,
that's
but
not
look
that's
at
not a
many of
racial
the
thing. She
interviews
in
that
this
she's
age, in
done.
this day and time, yo, she
Look
gonna
at
get
some
that again.
interviews that she's done,
She
and
she just did
she spelled that out in many of the
she just
interviews that
did
she's done. They
she
don't get
just did
that as
this
a black
movie.
woman. You don't get that type of control over your content or your creative freedom. That's why I love her better in her independent films because a lot of them had a black leadership, even if it may have been a white producer. A lot of them had a lot of black input in terms of the storytelling. That's why I liked her more independent films because it
Because
came
they
from
had black input.
yeah.
What independent films are you talking about?
A lot of my one
Let's
of my
first of
favorite ones from her was When Their Eyes Were Watching God. I loved her in and what was the name of that film? I'm trying to think of I cannot think of the name of it.
what
Uh
do you think of this film?
in this film, I really I looked at it from the perspective of directing and any actor to me who can act in something and direct it, I'm really critical of the process of it because I think
Mm-hmm.
wearing too many hats can be deadly. But I think this is one of the times where she wanted to take control after being gone for so long, taking control over that image. And that's what's being reported from her and from her castmates. Like she really put a lot of emphasis on both her artistic side and her doing all her own stunts and all her own action to her actually directing as well. So kudos to her for being able to pull that off with and she said she had a really small budget and she lost a lot of
Mm-hmm.
money in the process of making this film as well.
I'm
So,
sure.
so hearing all that and seeing this come out the way it did, um, even though the young man in the film that plays her son is getting a lot of attention for being the mute character, uh, it really it was a
What
good
kind
film.
of attention is he getting?
Only because he didn't have any lines really until the end of the film, and it was maybe like one or two lines. But it really just
He was the heart of the whole film, though.
yeah. Well, I'm just saying that's why he's getting a lot of attention because people are focusing on this young boy. But for Holly Berry being able to just step outside of what everybody expected out of you and really she produced a big portion of this film herself. She directed it and she starred in it. Uh, I can't, I couldn't. I had to look at it for what it was, and it was really hard to look at all the other elements because the movie it just went. It really just flowed. It had a good flow to it, so I enjoyed it. I allowed myself to just
So
enjoy.
I really enjoyed it,
Hmm.
and I enjoy movies, and I don't think they have to be independent to do this. I enjoy movies that uh, just Halle Berry is at her strongest when she's just playing real regular characters,
Hmm.
and that's not something that I think that we're used to. Um, I'm trying to think of um, you know, with the exception of playing Abraham Lincoln, Daniel Day Lewis typically plays um, like I don't know if I would call them regular because they do have this extraordinary characterization, but he plays them with this like really just like regular like there's nothing phenomenal about these characters other than the situations that they're in, the story itself, and his portrayal of the characters.
Hmm.
And when you were saying that you like her independent films, I too prefer Halle Berry's independent films because I think that she is incredible at playing just regular people um, in regular real life situations. Which Bruised was very much. There was no angle. There was no hook to the film. It's like this is the story and this is the character. Um,
And typically, like I found that like she has a strength when it comes to like playing real life individuals, which I think people hated about Monsters Ball because black people hated Monsters Ball, but in reality, like that's exactly what she was doing was playing just an everyday person in that setting,
Mm-hmm.
in that situation, and she's phenomenal at doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it is, and I hate the fact that that one movie they get caught up in the fact that she had sex with a white man when if she was a
But she had sex
man.
with white men in all her films. Let's not get twisted here. Like uh, things we lost in the fire was excellent. Um, there are a number of Halle Berry films that I don't even think, if you're talking about it from a perspective of black culture, even know exist.
Mm,
Because we have a tendency as a culture, like when you cross us in that space, we just like, we don't fuck with your shit no more.
yeah, like, but that's so dumb because how many black men have fucked white women in plenty of movies? I think
But it's
it's so typical for us. It's so typical for us, and I think we need to do better in terms of just
how many
supporting
black men
our.
have fucked white women in movies though?
You said what?
How many black men have fucked white women in movies?
Plenty of movies, plenty of movies. We just don't. It's so normal for us that we
Can
don't
you
even
think of
think
one?
about it. I'm sure there are plenty. Jungle Fever. Well, that doesn't count because she was
That
married.
was that was kind of like the whole point.
Yeah, but we can justify that though. We can definitely justify that. But anything
Yeah,
else,
can you think of
when
any others?
I'm sure there are plenty of them. I can't think of any right now.
You can't think of
Probably
none though.
anything with Wesley Snipes in it. Devil in a Blue Dress. Um, I know that was one of the movies where
No,
Denzel
Denzel
Washington
didn't fuck a white
decided.
woman on screen. Nope, Denzel didn't fuck a white woman on screen until he got gay.
Well, it still happened. It still happened. I'm just saying. It's just, and it's crazy that I can't think of that many of them, but it's they out there. It's out there, but we don't bash that character, that male character for making that choice on
You
screen.
ain't even name none of them, yo. You can't even remember none of them. You say you can't remember none of them because
And
there's so
that's
many.
a
I can't remember
problem.
none
That's a
neither. I
problem that
can't remember none though.
it's a problem that we can remember that those times that Holly Berry did it versus when a man did it.
Maybe it ain't as common as you think, nigga.
It is, but come on now. He did not have sex more times than a black man
No,
has
it's
had.
not. It's not the more. I don't know if it's the more of it. But right now, yo, you can't think of a distinct role that you remember a black man playing where he was piping a white woman.
That's crazy.
You can't think of one. Like
But
I'm giving you, like yo, it's been like
can
3 minutes we've been
can
here.
you name
You
one?
haven't named one
Can
person
you
yet.
name
You
one?
giving me general. No, I really can't. I'm sitting here thinking,
And that's a
and I'm
shame.
and I
That's
and
a
I'm trying to.
shame. That's a
So
shame.
so so the shame might actually be that, you know what I'm saying, like maybe Holly, made a bad decision when she decided to let.
Why was her and
Maybe
I'm
she made a
defending
bad
her.
decision.
I'm defending
Maybe
her because there are plenty of movies that I know
I'm not
where a
knocking her.
black
I'm
man
just
is
saying.
cool.
I'm just proposing that maybe she made a bad decision when she let Billy Bob make her feel good.
But we making it, and that's the problem that I have because people take it
I'm
so
just asking the
personal.
question, bro.
I'm saying it because people
I'm just
made it so
asking the question.
personal, and it almost feels like to me,
No, in the
it
movie,
almost
no,
felt like
hold on,
to
that's
me,
a running joke. There's
especially
no
black
personal here.
men.
There's
I know
no.
that, but people do take it that personal when it come to that role for her. Like it's almost like she was ours, she wasn't Charles. Like people were crushed when she did that.
Yeah,
So
people
much
were
so they
crushed.
don't even they overlook the fact that she had sex with. I don't think he was white. I think he was Hispanic, but she had
Who?
sex with a man
In
in
her
this
real
movie.
life,
No, in this movie right here.
she had sex with who?
She had sex with a, I believe he was a white man in this movie. He may have been Hispanic.
Nigga, she had sex with Billy Bob Thornton. And she did so well that motherfuckers was thinking that they actually was fucking for real in front of the camera.
That's because they was crushed. That's because they all had a crush.
They was crushed. They was crushed. And I mean, yo, like, that's fine. That's fine. Like, all of that, like, we understand. I think, particularly you and I as artists, we understand, like, where that comes from. I think that Halle Berry is a phenomenal actress, but I think also you have to take credit for when you've made some bad decisions, right? Like in the roles that you take, because you're right, Nate, in the fact that as actors, we don't always have a whole lot of creative control. Mm-hmm. Independent films definitely will give us an opportunity for more creative control. Mm-hmm. But like, I mean, I think we can also admit that maybe we took roles that we wasn't the right fit for, or we took roles that
we can say that. You can say that now
in projects that we knew wasn't
like if people did what they did now that we had to do, like in the 90s and beyond.
No. I'm talking about now, because you don't have to take any roles. And Halle Berry isn't the only black actor.
Do those things. Now
Halle Berry isn't the only black actor that has done this. Like,
no,
I said Cuba Gooding Jr. earlier. He did it. I'm trying to think of someone who's doing it like right now.
Will Smith has had love scenes with women.
Will Smith is a perfect example of someone who's taking some really, really like, yo, what was you thinking taking that role?
Yeah, but at the same time, that was their choice. And many of those types of roles really shaped who they were as actors and actresses. But I don't fault them for that, because many of them didn't have a choice. You know, many of them had to. Yeah, but they have a choice now. Like if some of them roles,
you always have a choice, yo. You always have a choice. But if
that's what you want to do, and you have nothing else to go by, like what else are you going to do? Be the maid or the butler in something? Like, come on, like.
But being the maid, but that's my point, though. Being the maid or the butler is the choice.
Yeah, but that's not the choice that they wanted. They no longer wanted to make those types of choices and roles anymore. They wanted more roles that were going to stretch them.
Nate, as an actor, if Hollywood called you tomorrow and you didn't feel right with the role for whatever reason, would you still say yes?
Well, for me, that's why I choose to be a theater actor, because I have more options. As a film and TV actor, often your options, especially a person of color, and I'm saying things are changing right now. I don't think it's really totally left field for us right now, but I think right now we have more options as to where we can be seen, and how a movie that was shot with a iPhone can be an Academy Award contender now in ways that it wasn't before. I definitely see that, but I think then I can't make a remark for them in a time period like that. I know for me, that's why I chose to be a theater actor, because I still have restrictions, but I still have more options, because I can produce my own play and be in it and sell it out.
Right.
I just, that's why I choose, and that's why many people choose to be theater actors. But for them at that time, I don't think it was many things for somebody like a Halle Berry that wasn't going to be controversial, wasn't going to be, a black cast, that, because most of the movies from that time when she was doing movies, the 90s, you were either her caliber actor or you was doing one of those B-list modern blaxploitation films.
And Halle Berry's day?
I say that in the 90s. So in the 90s, that was the option. Either you was going to be one of those love and basketball actors, or you was going to be Sanaa Lathan, or you was going to be Halle Berry. And we have to understand that Sanaa Lathan was not on the caliber of Halle Berry. So, it was, and there was also a space where it was only a few people that were going to be stars.
Okay.
And Halle Berry rose up just like Whoopi Goldberg or Angela Bassett is in 2000 just getting her just desserts when she was out at the same
Who?
time making films.
You
So
said Angela Bassett?
right, we knew her and loved her, but she still wasn't on that level in terms of people and fame and all those things. So Holly Berry, I mean, many people think that she got to where she was because she was lighter and she was prettier. And but I think in movies like this, she's shown like I really can act. I'm really good at what I do, and I think she should. I think she should stay in that independent film role or life where she's able to produce her own work and have creative control over it. Um, but
Man,
I love her in some of those smaller films that she did, like Dorothy Dandridge story, and
nigga said stay in lane.
I'm just saying, it seems that she does better in these roles. Who would have thought Halle Berry would have been a good director? I wouldn't have thought to.
I thought Holly Berry would be a good anything.
Well, that's because you was looking at all the other stuff, all her other attributes.
I wasn't looking at her other attributes, nigga. I was looking at her acting ability.
Okay, okay,
Holly Berry been that.
okay. We can go with that story. But I definitely agree. She's had a very diverse career in terms of the films that she's chosen. Um, but yeah, she wasn't crying a lot in this. She wasn't doing her sniffle, snot cry. She was really. I mean, it just
Hold on, I thought
with Viola Davis.
Viola Davis with the ugly
But
cry.
Viola Davis took it from Halle Berry because that typically was Halle Berry was crying in every movie she was in, and that became her tragic mulatto story. But she, I mean, this look, I'm looking at over her films right now, and she's had some pretty. I loved her in Boomerang. She was good in Boomerang, Losing Isaiah, Dorothy Dandridge.
Mm-hmm.
These eyes were watching God. I didn't know she was in Spider Man. She played the junkie in Jungle Fever. Yeah, she did some movies I didn't even remember her being in. But yeah, so overall, I think these three films were really
What Spider Man was she in?
uh Spider Man 2001,
I forgot that too.
Once Upon a Time Superheroes. Yeah. But I think these three films kind of really for us to start off with these three films was a good look in terms of what the overall theme of this season is going to be, really
Mm-hmm.
depicting women in various roles in film, television, and beyond. And all these three films, I think, will be, well, not so much controversial as they are really good films. This really good films overall, uh, and this was a good start. And I know I have a lot of ideas, and George has a lot of ideas for things that we're going to watch uh, coming up. But these three really, for me, they were good. They were good, solid films. You want to close this out, sir?
Yep. Thank you for coming. Binge Worthy Podcast is back, season 3. We're coming with the heat later next week. So you
Mm-hmm.
gotta come on through. When you watch this, leave us comments. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube. Yeah, you're watching this on YouTube probably. But if you're not watching us on YouTube, follow us on YouTube.
On Facebook
Leave us some
Live as well
comments.
as YouTube.
Let us know what's up. Let us know what you thought. He don't think Halle Berry. I think Halle Berry is a shit. She just got some bad decision making when it comes to movies. But he think it's just like she need to stay in her little independent lane. Tell us what you think. We want to hear from you.
He be
And we'll be back
sifting.
next week and all that good stuff.
All right, all right. That's it.